Hello everyone, hopefully you are doing well. It's time for another Tech Talks, and this is kind of a series of videos we're doing on the side on Sundays, so you guys can kind of put through your thoughts, put through your discussion points, or just generally questions or whatever you have for the channel, for War Thunder, for anything really, whether it's other games, Enlisted, or anything like that. So that's the general idea. At the end of the day, it's open to all and open to everyone, and it's been very fun to do these, so we're just going to continue to do them because I think it's a good, at least for me, like a palate cleanser to get ideas out there and also just see what people want to chat about, because that's obviously important. At the end of the day, shouldn't just be single centric. So let's get started. If you want something talked about in the next Tech Talk, make sure to leave a comment on this video, so you can get involved, and then also we'll do some quick fire questions at the end from Twitch, which is where we stream it from. So let's get going and let's get started. First of all, we have Chost. Chost says the Char 25 and AMX M4 definitely should be given the historical 4-second reload. I mean, the other AMXs do have it. I'm guessing the difference is the 90mm and the 100mm. But the thing is, like, the reloads have never been about history. Like, I know sometimes they conveniently line up, but they just do it for balance stuff. So if the vehicles start doing worse, they will what they'll end up doing is just reducing them, and if they do better, then they'll increase it or change the BRs. So sure, like, why not? Like, I mean, they'll just go up in BR again, like all of the other French vehicles, but sure. So then we have Ballistics Computer, quite a cool name. Spawning at capture points really ought to be experimented with, almost like Battlefield. Maybe this wouldn't be the main mode, but a lot of my friends who I've tried to introduce to War Thunder are put off by the slow pace. And I think it would make battles a little less awkward when your team has all been killed and is at spawn, but still has points elsewhere, which became impossible to defend. I could go either way on this one, to be honest. Well, the first one is Arcade is an incredibly fast game mode. And if you want War Thunder to be the speed of like an FPS, when it comes to like its general movement and TTK and everything like that, it's just not going to work, because the way that the damage system works in the game is very different to an FPS. So for me, it's either play Arcade, which obviously is a lot faster than the other game modes, and then the other one, which is obviously thought about, is spawning at spawn points. I mean, yeah, maybe you could do that. Like, it might be a little bit more tactical to do that and all that, but also at the same time, I feel like if let's say I've like dominated a part of the map and then just an enemy just appears behind me because they've spawned behind me, it would just be a pain. Imagine if, like, I don't know, somebody rushed the central cap of a point and was in like a squad of, I don't know, 4. They waited for them to cap in, like, the fastest vehicle at that BR, and then the other 3 people just spawned straight on top of it with spawn protection and with their tanks and could fight from there. Like, maybe they could do it with like mice or something like that, right? It would just be a pain. So I don't know. I don't. The issue with speed in War Thunder is it has to be understood it's never going to be as fast as other games. And also Arcade is easily the way to go if that's what you want. If you want speed at that setup. Then we have Keta. Hi Tech, what do you think about an IFF for Sim? Like a call-in button that makes all allies in radio range to ping on the map, or a visual indication in bino view only. They could also add a consequence making you more visible by planes because of the radioactivity you are doing. Yeah, sure. I mean, why not? If it reduces team killing, then sure. Not every plane has IFF, obviously, but with the continued improvement of stuff like radars and RWRs and things like that, I don't see why they couldn't do that. Like, at the end of the day, like, it would be something that would be nice. There's a lot of team killing in War Thunder, especially in Sims, so it would be good to try and fix that. They are bringing in a change. they are bringing in a change for that setup. So hopefully they can continue with it, right? There's an IFF for tanks if you rangefind already. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so the only thing they'd have to do is do like the whole target thing, and then targeting and say like, is this an ally? Is this an enemy? So yeah, they could do that. That'd be good. Sweet dreams, Sebastian. Have a nice rest. But yeah, I'd be fine with it. And they're already bringing in the thing for team killing though, like so you won't pay for repair cost if you get team killed. So that should be in pretty soon, and that will be a nice change. So we don't have to really worry about that kind of going forward. Then we have the Mozza. The Mozza. I like that name. Hi Tech, really enjoying the tech talks. As you mentioned yourself a few times, CAS can be very overpowered in the mid-tiers. What would be a good way to help make them more balanced? Would increasing their SP be the best choice, or maybe increase the price of their bombs? So a lot of CAS and mid-tiers, they aren't just strong because they have like the initial hit of the rockets or the bombs. They can follow up with their guns, right? So if you change the SP of bombs, obviously it makes it easier, but I don't think it fully fixes it. I think what you do is something that they've been doing slowly with certain nations. You start adding in these high muzzle velocity, high rapid fire, low clip guns. So BTR-ZD, for example, M53-59, Istavak, Bosvak, R3, with the 20 mil. I think you do stuff like that. It seems to work the best. Give people on the ground good defense to be able to deal with these things. Instead of, the slow firing 40 millimeters. Hey Moon, nice to see you. There's plenty of vehicles like that they can add. Maybe not for every nation, which might be a bit of a problem, but I think overall that's kind of the way that I would personally do it. That's the way that I see it set up. I do actually need to just move myself a little bit. I see I'm falling off the screen, but but yeah, like that's what I would do. I don't think there's a different way of doing it. You just have to add counters, which is something they started doing over the last year. It took them like 3 or 4 years to do it, but at least it's getting done, right? And that's how you deal with it. You could also do it so you could do changes which are more reactive. So instead of just having like these changes happen every 4 or 5 months, which what it feels like happens with SP costs. Instead, you could do it every few weeks, trying to change up the meta and trying to make it more scrambled. So the things that are the most popular and doing the most well, you just increase by 100, 200, and then see what else comes around, and then you just keep shifting it, circling it over and over again. So therefore, people don't get used to doing the same things, the same playstyles over and over and over again. If they want to be good at, doing that area, you've got to learn all different things. I think that is something that should also be important. So yeah, those are the two things I would look at personally. Then we have Nikolai Sutorovich, I think, which is pretty fun. Hey Tech, one thing I find most difficult about grinding Ground B is lack of variety in the mission modes. I know this topic is brought up a lot on the forums and in videos among the community, but it appears the most common fix is just to add more missions to the game. I'm wondering if a quicker fix would be to add a level of randomness to the modes they have already. For example, to my understanding, most maps have only one configuration in the mission mode domination, so the A, B, C points will always be in the same locations. For the given map, I think an easier and potentially quicker fix would be if they could each capture 2 to 4 points it can be located at and give it a random chance to spawn at any of them. The results would be each map having 8 to 64 different setups of capture points. This would add more variety to the game and potentially reduce the redundancy and repetition of the current modes have. I think it could also help out in other areas, such as spawn camping, as the games won't be as predictable and neither will player movements. I think it would add more playstyles to the game and could expand the meta to be less linear. And I'm also curious if you believe this change could impact botting as well. giving it would drastically increase the randomness of the game and add more complexity to coding of the bots. This could increase the exposure to them, of them, especially in air battles, as some will fail to complete their tasks, such as bombing bases that exist in one variation of the map, but not the current one. I'm no expert in botting, so this is truly a shot in the dark, but in my head, it could be a feasible option to at least expose more accounts that are botting. The botting part, I think, won't work because the current state of how bots work and how the scripts work, the way that it's all set up, they will just go for specific targets. So it doesn't matter about the map. They're actually attached to the targets themselves, not attached to the map. So you'd have to remove those targets, which is fair. Like, you could do that, but then you screw over everybody else, right? The best way to deal with stuff like that is obviously ban them when you figure out what they're doing, or at the same time changing rewards based around that stuff. In ground, the bots right now are all AA pieces, or pieces which are trying to be AA pieces. The 2S38, for example, the Veek, the Sergeant York, those types of vehicles. Those types of vehicles are kind of all over the place, and used by bots. So the thing about the maps, right? So let's actually have a look at something. Because I have the game open as well. If you have a look at custom battles, you can actually see all of the domination things, right? So, for example, if we have a look at Finland, so Finland as a map, there are 5 versions of it already. So you've got the Conquest 1, 2, 3, and then you've got the Finland battle, and then you've got the standard domination, right? So most maps have 5 variants of them already. If you have a look at other maps, like Poland, you now have 5 times 4, which is 20 versions of what is pretty much the same map, just slightly changed, very similar to each other though. So yeah, you have already a ton of different variants, and they've started to add in more and more over the last little bit. So what you're asking for is happening. It's just taking a little bit longer. The idea of changing the capture points and putting them in different places. So from a variety point of view, that sounds really good and I like it. But the problem is if you have like a million versions of the same map, there are going to be ones which are just straight up unbalanced, or most of them will be straight up unbalanced, because if you move the capture points in one way, what happens is you end up like favoring one team over another. And you just keep doing this over and over and over again until one of the teams just doesn't want to play, right? And then so instead of keeping what would be classed as a balanced game, what ends up happening is you actually have a setup where there's a bunch of the maps which are favored to one side, a bunch of maps which are favored to the other side, and once people work that out, then there will just be times where they just leave, which already happens with some of the maps that we have, right? Just people just don't want to play them. So from a variety point of view, it sounds really good. From a balance point of view, it sounds like a nightmare. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, do we want a ton of variety even to a ridiculous level, or would it just be better to make more maps? And right now, I think the way to go is to actually have more maps. They've added a ton of maps over like the last little bit, and I'm hoping they continue to add in a bunch of the general maps. And a lot of the older maps, especially in air, which have been more recently changed, those were some of the most unbalanced. So we're getting to a point of usefulness, but I'm hoping that they just keep adding more maps, and that is the variety in the game instead of the different versions of stuff. Both work very well though. So it's a fun suggestion. I like it. I would actually like to see it in practice, see how it goes. Hey, Tiny Bubba, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Now we have Aldo Caruli. That's pretty fun. There's a lot of fun names so far. Hi, TEC. Loving the vids. It's the perfect company for the US archery grind. Agreed. At this time, I've, like you, been playing this game for a decade, experiencing all the game modes. I really think that one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue now, for now, is botting. Do you think Gaijin will actually address the problem in a decisive manner, or we will just have to live with it until the problem becomes unbearable because bots actually generate a lot of revenue, packs premium vehicles, and time? I fear the second turning of events because it could be devastating for the game. Like what happened with Escape from Tarkov, a successful game now almost killed by cheaters because cheating on the game generated billions of dollars in the short term. Yeah, I agree, is basically it. Like, we're in very similar situations, right? So we don't have to worry too much about the grind stuff, probably don't have to deal with the SL stuff too bad. So our opinions are not really going to be worried about those things. My head and the way that my head is set up right now, I'm nearly like 80 to 90% worried about the botting stuff because I've heard and also researched a ton of different games, a lot of mobile games, weirdly enough, and also a lot of like Facebook games, and even like World of Warcraft had a huge issue with botting, and still does, by the way, today. Like, automatic farming. Like there's you can actually have a look at some videos from Asmongold, and there was there was a set of like bots who were just like circling thing on World of Warcraft. I'll see if I can find it because it was just hilarious. But yeah, these things just annihilate games. Like I don't know how else to put it, and it just sucks because now that the economy is in a place which is, generally good and probably a little bit better, that's good. But what ends up happening is, it was this video here. What ends up happening is it means that the average player's experience is nuked, and therefore bots take over the game, and nobody actually plays the game anymore. And therefore the revenue actually dries up for the botters, but they've already killed the game, so it doesn't matter, right? Like, it's all nuts. This is the video I remember. I can't remember when it was from. Let's see. 2 years ago. Good old Asmongold, another streamer and a little bit of fun times. But yeah, I'll show you what I mean. Like in World of Warcraft, there was like this thing where you could, if you like botted with a certain thing, you could just go around and pick up this certain thing that people wanted to use for like a different setup, right? So that always sucks. Right, let's do that. You can see here, like, he brought in a bunch of people to try and like stop them, but it just didn't matter, right? Like, you can see here, these were the guys who were just wandering around, and they were just killing these guys over and over and over again. Like, these guys going in the circle, and they brought in so many different people just to like see it. But look, they just go around these guys and they just kill these guys over and over and over again with like these priests. And this was how they were like farming levels. This is how they were doing all of this stuff, right? So this isn't just like a War Thunder thing. This happens in a lot of games. And I've seen a ton of people bring up the revenue side of it. Like, Gaijin makes a ton of revenue from it, and I get where that comes from, because obviously people are like, well, they get the premium sales, and because these bots usually buy like 1 or 2 premiums. But the thing is, the money that they're using to the money that they're usually using to pay for these things either eventually gets charged back, or is generally fraudulently got through stolen money, or at the same time, what can actually end up happening is the idea is you purchase something for $30 or use a VPN, so you purchase it in a very cheap region, and then after that, what happens is they sell the account for way more. So what Gaijin has to do is, first of all, start actually banning these accounts, and then second of all, go after the people who are selling them. Like that, like if you have a look at all of the high profile setups for many games, whether it was Riot, who had some court cases against some guys who wrote scripts for League of Legends. Dota had the same thing. I believe Activision Blizzard had the same thing with Call of Duty. You have to go after the source of these things and then hammer it, and that might be why they're leaving them around, to see what goes on. It reminds me of Valve with CS:GO. So Valve specifically would notice a cheat maybe like a month or even a month and a half before like it got people banned. And the reason why you leave it to fester is to see if you can find where it's coming from, and therefore you can smash it on the head, right? So that sometimes happens in like real life. Like, let's say, I don't know, you have like a gangster set of people, and the police know that there's this one person who's selling something that he shouldn't be. Sometimes what you do is you let that person do what he's doing, so therefore it can lead to the person who's higher up in the food chain, right? So this is like a common thing that a lot of companies and even governments do for this setup. So I'm hoping they're doing that, because right now, as you know, as many people have said, and as many, you know, have looked at, their way of dealing with these things in the past was through the economy stuff, like changing the rewards and moving them around. Well, they've removed all that stuff now. So now what do we do? And right now, the answer seems to be nothing. And they're never going to talk about it, or they're never going to talk about the issue, and they're never going to talk about how they're fixing it until it is fixed. But it won't be fixed because there'll always be a way around. So yeah, it's just an awful situation, and I really hope it doesn't, you know, just end up murdering the game. I don't think it will. The amount of turnover player rate in War Thunder is still very good. There's still a lot of people playing the game, and you know, the bots, at least right now, are in low tier, in parts of Air RB, in very small parts of Ground RB. There are a lot in Ground AB right now, and in Naval, but we'll have to see, right? So yeah, it sucks, and I'm hoping that something will be done about it. I agree, though. It is the most pressing issue at this moment when it comes to War Thunder. Nothing else matters until that's fixed, because that affects everything, right? It's kind of like the server thing from a few years ago. If that isn't fixed, then nothing else happens. Let's see. Why is my camera busted? Did I like? Let's see. Oh, am I just sitting like? Did I? I think I may have moved my camera at some point. Oh no, I did something. Because like I'm not in line with anything anymore. Maybe I like moved the screen. There we go. So we have Cat Top. Hey TEC, what are your opinions on adding South Korea to the Israeli tree? What gaps would it fill? Could we see rank 3 being added to Israel as a result? The amounts of M48s and M60s might make Israeli grinds go my god, since the Magags are bad enough and SKs will only add more. Well, you're not interested in 9 M48s? You know, that to me was fun. When they passed that the United Korean Independent Tech Tree. When that got passed to the devs and there was like 9 M48s. Like, yep, let's do it, you know? Let's have fun. Let's do it. But then they added Israel to the game and did that anyway. I mean, South Korea doesn't have a lot to offer for rank 1, 2, and 3 anyway, so it probably wouldn't work. At the end of the day, if there's nowhere to add it properly, that, you know, would make more sense. But sure, add it to Israel. I would personally add it to Japan or China. Either of those, I think, would fit. It just has to not go to a major nation. Like, that's it. Nothing else matters. That's the only thing to bolster the ranks of what we've seen from other places. But I think it should be fine. You know, it will be whenever they add the vehicles, which they are coming because they added the Korean voice lines. We'll just have to see how it goes. I don't think it'll be bad. I don't think anything will be wrong or with them. It's just interesting to see where they'll end up. This is Skitcher. I'm newer-ish to War Thunder. Spawn camping is super frustrating. Another potential fix, I thought, is to make the red spawn area bigger. I can't see a reason that the space between the cap zones and the spawn points needs to be that big. Also, maybe show the dots on the spawn screen so you have more info on where to spawn. Rad video. Yeah, I mean, there's even some maps now where you can't actually go between the spawns as an enemy team, right? So the on Seversk, for example, on the south side, if you go in the center of the spawns, you're still spotted on some of the versions. They're actually doing it on if you play the Atomic Thunder event, they're actually doing it as well with that map, so that might be something that's coming in the future, and I think it's fine. Not that you can spawn in those areas, but you can actually see if somebody's in between the spawns, which is good. I would personally say that, yeah, just increase the spawn area a bit. Should work pretty well and should be quite nice. I don't see why not. Like, I'll be fine with it. I don't think it will stop spawn camping, though. The way to stop spawn camping is go to the positions that counter the spawn campers. I know that's not the easiest thing to do, and also at the same time, there is a lot of problems with certain maps, with the sightlines and everything, but sometimes you just got to do it. Like, there was times today I was playing the AMX 32105, and that's all I was doing. I was just playing what would be classed as the bitch positions, just to make sure that, you know, we had our areas covered, and it meant my win rate in the vehicle went up by like 20-30% on the day. It's just some of that has to be done sometimes. If the rest of your team ain't doing it, sometimes you got to do it, you know. Then we have just another Bob, good old Bobby. What is your opinion on an event with all forces combined, boats, planes, ships, and tanks? It would obviously need a new map, like a river delta, or a bunch of smaller islands connected with bridges and some BR regulations, the max BR is 3.7 or something. I feel like people need to experience something like this, so at least some of them would realize how stupid it would be. I'm all for that. I like that idea. You know, I'm all for, you know, theories and opinions and theoretical stuff going forward, but what I'm much more for is practical experimentation when it comes with a lot of different things. So yeah, why not? You know, yeah, I mean, technically you could do it on some of the maps that already exist. You could do it on Vietnam, for example. You could do it on is it Tunisia? You could do it on Tunisia. Just add a capture point in the middle of the water. There you go. And then just say, hey, there you go. There's the thing. 5-7. Have fun. Enjoy your life. See how long it lasts. You know, have it for a weekend, and then yeah, like, why not? Just have a bit of fun. Just enjoy the Helenas, just annihilating your spawns over and over again. But yeah, sometimes ideas need to be trialed, right? And a lot of the times in War Thunder, when we've had stuff be talked about or stuff be sorted, or, you know, stuff, you know, generally had a look at, one of the things that is a great equalizer is how it actually acts in game before opinions. I remember the PVV 301 is one of the more recent ones where everybody was very overhyped on it because, oh, it's another autocannon at low tiers, it's going to be the new R3. No, it was trash and still is trash because the R3 isn't just an autocannon, there's a bunch of other things to it as well. So yeah, for me, I'd be fine with doing something like that. I think overall it would be okay. Then we have Hot Snack, or Hot Snack. Hi, Tech. I've seen talks about the Polish tech tree in English and non-English speaking forums. Some went so far as to plan out each rank of both air and ground trees, but I've never seen anyone talk on how it would even fit into the game. Most vehicles would either be captured, bought from another nation, and I think it would be redundant, as it would be mostly Soviet vehicles with more Western designs down the line. I'd love to see more representation for my nation. I don't think a whole tree would fit into the game. You have hit the nail on the head with all of these discussions, Hot Snack, and they're very important discussions to have. The actual vehicles themselves, and if they were there historically or not, doesn't matter and never will matter. What actually matters is how they fit, right? And that is the discussion that nobody wants to have, because it is a hard discussion. And because if you say there's a lot of people who want these trees to be independent. Well, okay, they can be independent, which, you know, works very well. But the problem with that is then they'll never be as useful as a lot of the nations in the game. So unless people are like really interested in those nations, then what ends up happening is they just don't play them. You know, Israel in game is a great example of this. So they just get added, that minority of people are happy, and then they're just never seen again, right? Which, because they're just not fun to play compared to the nations that exist. So the default answer has to be a subtree, you know? Like, that has to be the way to go with these things. Or, with Poland, the way that they've dealt with stuff like in the past is they've actually added them as event vehicles or squadron vehicles, you know? Like stuff like the Leo 2PL for Poland, and even stuff like the Garland, which is technically a Polish vehicle too, and also the Trizniak. So at least you get like a little bit of representation, but I understand it's not the same. So the way to do these properly is you do them as thingy vehicles, like you do them as subtrees. That's the only really way that you can end up doing it, right? Nice to see you, Kilgoad. Thank you for the subscription. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much, man. You don't have to time him out, Money. Just let him go. He'll get bored. He'll get bored eventually. Right, let's see. Next one. Whoops. So yeah, more representation is good, but also improving nations at the same time is something that should be done, right? So then we have Leonard Bosch. We need the Leopard 140. Sorry, we need the 140mm Leo this summer. I think for the next crafting event, it's possible to get the battle between the MiG-25 and F-15 with its own trailer. Maybe some premium tanks rank 4 to 6. I don't think there's much of a battle between the MiG-25 and F-15. The MiG-25 like just would not work in War Thunder. So I don't know. We'll have to see what goes on. The F-15 and the MiG-25 aren't exactly comparable. I'd rather the 140 Leo be a tech tree vehicle though. You know, just like all those big thumpers. I think that's the next step, which will be quite nice, quite fun to play. We haven't really had any high tier MBTs in a long time, apart from mud covers. We have Hawk the Red. I've been grinding down the Japanese tank line, and I've noticed the mid-tier CAS hell that happens. I feel a large chunk of the reason is that it seems no one really grinds or brings SPAAs, or when they do, they just use them as a disposable tank to capture a point if they get lucky. I think it's partly because the rewards for shooting down aircraft compared to the time and effort it takes to shoot them down sometimes is just not worth it in some eyes, especially in the assault front. And so you often get situations where the few who do bring SPAs get swarmed, and there's nothing the team can do. A fix could be to have an SPA-only medal for shooting down the aircraft that give a little extra SL to incentivize more players to actually be a SPAA and engage aircraft instead of using it as a tank with inefficient weaponry. Another is a new SPA mechanic borrowed from light tanks where they can spot enemy aircraft to help everyone in the team engage or look out for the aircraft. With the destruction giving the usual scout bonuses, the command of air alert is a step in the right direction, but I feel some ignore it or never use it. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. Most people who use light tanks don't even scout vehicles, so if we're going off what people do, we're already screwed, right? So for me, it's much more important to at least have the mechanics there, so then people can give them a go. I completely agree with the issues, but I don't think they're the reasons why you think they're like that. I honestly don't think people don't use SPAAs as, SPAAs in mid-tiers because, they don't grind them or whatever. It's because most of them are absolutely terrible. Like, that's the thing. They have low fire rates, they have low velocities, and a lot of the planes are very good at, moving around them. The ones with higher velocities and high fire rates who can just keep going over and over and over again are ones which are used. The Oswin 2, for example, Whirlwind, Bosvark, Eastervark, ZSD, BTRZD, sorry, ZSD 63, I think it's called. All of these vehicles came in and they get a lot of use because they're pretty good, and the BTRZD specifically over the last little bit. And then what do? They up the BRs of them. So then they have to go up against even harder planes. And then, you know, what ends up happening is they just get annihilated. And then they start bringing in more mechanics like overpressure, or, you know, they literally just gave overpressure to guns. So now, like something that I started doing, especially during the Battle Pass with the 37mm or 45mm of the Soviets, because there was a challenge for that, I ended up just shooting the top of a bunch of AAs and it would one-tap them. I did it with the ME410s as well. One HE shell, dead. Because it overpressures the vehicle. So you're adding in mechanics which make it even harder to use SPAAs when they're already getting annihilated. And that's the thing. So there is SL incentives for people to knock down planes. You know, you do have the I can't remember what they're called, but there are actually like awards which are attached to, you know, destroying planes and ground forces. But the problem is it's a lot harder to do because you have to line up the plane properly, you have to shoot down the line properly, you have to make sure to somehow dodge the guns coming down, the bombs, the rockets, and all of these things, and they can all overpressure you. So even if like a rocket lands near you as an SPAA, you die. And also at the same time, because you spawn in the same place or one of two places every time, all the planes know where you're going to be. Because unless you like change your position, which you can do under fire sometimes, but you can do it, then, you know, you just get mauled because they know exactly where you're at because you spawn in exactly the same place every time. So it's just the fact that the SPAAs in the mid-tiers are just not good enough. And the ones which are good enough and do okay to try and keep their teams alive, they constantly get up BR'd. so then you just have the same problem again, where instead of having a BTR-ZD, instead of an Istavak, which both vehicles went up, same with the M53, same with the Bosvark, you know, even the Skink went up, for God's sake. The Skink! Like, it... So yeah, whenever any SPAA has any modicum of success, they just put them up in BR. And then the problem just becomes again, right? And just keeps going. And then they modify overpressure and then you just die again. So yeah, not too fun. The thing they should do is they should not keep increasing these SPAs BRs and add in similar vehicles to them, right? I think that's the way to go. Hey Miguel, nice to see you. So we have Voggers. Hi TEC. Not sure if you talked about this, but a mechanic I feel would be good for the game is the unloading and reloading of guns. Maybe instead of the one press to select next loaded round, you could double press the same button to unload the round in the chamber and reload it with the round you double pressed. Also, just wanted to bitch about the Stormer being unplayable on Australian ping, since you started talking about the recent guided missiles changes. Let's see. I know I have a leak in the green screen. It's here, right? It's because of the... Here, there you go. You see it? There you go. It's the wind. I can't do anything about it right now. But the... Oh, what do you mean here? Yeah, that's just because I'm green. I'm an alien. I've played about 50 matches using it and have only managed 5 kills on jets. I've been aiming it properly almost every single time my darts have phased through the vehicle I'm shooting at. The best ping I can get anywhere is around 240, so for now I just can't have any viable anti-air for a whole 3 BRs in the main tech tree. Yeah, and they also would BR the Stormer, so it doesn't even have a lineup anymore. Again, they did that like 2 years ago and just killed it. So yeah, there's a black splotch to the viewers, right? Oh, fair enough. Well, oh, is it the mic? Like it might be the mic. Right, let's just make sure not to move that. But yeah, so the Stormer is the canary in the coal mine, right? Is probably the best way to put it. The reason why it's the canary in the coal mine is because it shows the issues of desync pretty aggressively when it comes to War Thunder. Because in order for you to hit a target with the Stormer, you have to take into account your ping, the enemy's ping, and the server relay between them, which you can't do because it's impossible. So a lot of the times when you shoot things with the Stormer, what ends up happening is they just, even though it goes through the vehicle, it technically didn't hit, right? Even though on your end it did hit. And that's one of the problems with the vehicle. That's why stuff like the AIM-4 never got added, by the way. So the Stormer is so sad and has been for a long time, because it's one of those vehicles which should do really well and used to do okay, but then they just kept ramping up the CAS once again, and also the ping issues with it. It's a fantastic case of showing, you know, why we talked about, you know, the problem with it, and also like going through it. But yeah, it just sucks, and it's something that you can't really talk too much about unless you've really experienced those high ping levels, because the game just plays completely differently at like different areas of ping, right? So the round thing is interesting as well. Gaijin have actually talked about this one in the past. So there's a lot of vehicles which you cannot actually change, or once you have a round loaded, you can't actually unload the round. So the idea is if the breach is closed and the round is ready, you can't unload it and get it out. Now, there is a bunch of vehicles where technically you can, and they could add something like that in, where it takes you a longer reload to replace the round and change it. But I actually think there'll be a better system which would work for every vehicle. And the system would be simple. As a straight on and on switch. So if people didn't want to use it, they don't have to use it. But the switch would be simple. It would be, do you want to confirm loading a specific round? So what this means is if you fire a round, you would have to manually select the round that you want loaded before you load it. And this would mean that the reload wouldn't start until you selected that round. But also, as I said, you could turn off that option and have the reloads the way that they are now. I think that would be the best way of doing it, and everybody would get what they wanted. So unloading a round wouldn't have to happen because you would be able to select the specific round you want at the time. And yeah, I suppose they could add in the mechanic for vehicles realistically to load the specific rounds, but also at the same time, I think I would prefer it if they just added in the first thing. But yeah, should be okay. Then we have the House of Smiths with a lot of spaces between his things, so we'll see how it goes. Hello again, Tech. Hello. Let's see. Last week, you told me to stop pushing RRBEC, so I have a short rant and 2 questions seeking help with my frustration. Last year, after finally researching every aircraft in War Thunder, I ventured deep into playing Ground RB. I'm terrible. I can't see shit, but I'm learning tons and really love the gameplay. Well, that's good. Experiencing the strategy of Ground RB has made me really frustrated with the state of Air RB. Compared to Ground RB, the game mode of Air RB feels like it's still stuck in beta. I wish there was a way to create air lineups, have bombers contribute to the upper tiers, and have top tier matches last longer than 7 minutes. I'm not saying I want a 2 REC mode, but I wish Air RB could have more strategic gameplay elements, similar to every other RB game mode in War Thunder. There isn't strategic elements in Naval. I know there's Sim EC, but the Sim cockpit only view isn't for me, and I feel the Sim experience is much better served by other games. I know there's Air RB, and it's awesome at low tiers, but it's awful at top tier. Top tier Air feels underserved and stale. Oh wait, I need to go down. There we go. I've loved War Thunder Aviation for over 10 years and 1,300 hours, and I'm so excited for future vehicles, but after all this time, I just wish there was more to it. He researched all of the vehicles, all of the aviation vehicles in War Thunder in 1,300 hours. That's nuts, actually. That should be really well regarded. You've done really well on that one. So, 1. Do you think a limited respawn mechanic could ever be added to RB, or just for top tier EC maps? Then 2, in general, how do you feel Gaijin could improve the game mode for RB at the top tiers? I mean, first of all, just play RAB. The AB gives you everything you want, right? The only thing it doesn't give you is the realistic model stuff, but like you haven't said you want that. So AB at the high tiers actually does that. Now I don't know how many people play Jet AB, but that would give you all of the variety and stuff that you wanted, right? So that's kind of the way to push forward with it. The way to like improve it in RRB is just to have more like general things to go after. So instead of like 2 or 3 convoys and then different bases and stuff, you can have a bunch more stuff just going on. But as we talked about, then at the end of the day, just play sim. There's just too many people who don't like these systems right now. There's a lot of pushback when it comes to these massive EC maps, and you can even see it in general playstyles. What most people do is they just spawn, go to the center of the map and dogfight. And I agree it's awful, and it's something that has plagued RRB for the longest time, not just at the highest level, but at every level. The skill or strategy of RRB died 3 or 4 years ago, and I have no idea why. Like people just decided it just wasn't worth it. So now everybody just beehives in the middle. Whenever somebody's spotted, everybody guns for them, and it, ends up in a completely different crazy place. So it seems like a lot of people are liking this setup, because now that they've added more of these high-tier jets, there's a lot of people who are really responding very well to it, and they are, having a great time. So the simple fact with it is the only way to be able to like benefit all people is for people to play the different game modes that suit them more, to try different things. So I don't know, like the RRB at high tiers, some people are going to enjoy, some people are not going to enjoy, and the skill level has definitely reduced in a big way. But that's just how this stuff goes. It's not a surprise at all to me that's happened, because everything has just increased in speed. And the more changes you do to the mode to try and benefit, the ideas of more strategy, especially at the higher echelons, it just means that people who don't have spaded things are just going to get annihilated. You could add in like a respawn mechanic, so more people can, join in, I suppose, if you die. But at the end of the day, then you're just going to have people camping the airfields, which is what happens in sim. What I would do is, I would honestly say, for everybody who wants more of these mechanics, and I know it sucks doing like the only cockpit mode thing and all of these things, but just play sim for like a week and then come back and at those levels, at the higher tiers, just play sim for a week, and then let's have like a conversation about what it's actually like, and then we can go from there. Because I think it's very, very important to have like that basis, right? Because once again, it's just something that some people enjoy and some people don't. Then we have Lubdub. Hi Tech. I have deuteranopia, red-green colorblindness, and I have a hard time telling red from green from brown. Thus, when I play ground realistic, I have a very hard time seeing a brown tank on green grass, and bushes and other camouflages that make it nearly impossible. I mostly play arcade ground, realistic naval and realistic air battles, but I miss the option to bring in a plane, helicopter of my choosing, and I miss the fun of correctly identifying target vehicles and using the rangefinder and such things unique to realistic. Do you have any suggestions to help with finding enemies in realistic? I know you mentioned being the importance of listening, not just looking. Besides adjusting the team squad color markers, I don't see much to help about color blindness in the settings. In the actual settings themselves, there isn't actually a lot of stuff to kind of help with that. The only things you really have is like post effects stuff, right? So you can change some of the brightnesses and things, and also the sharpness of things. So the sharpness basically means that you'll be able to detect things which are a little bit like closer to things. So changing like the sharpness could work. Maybe screwing around with the color correction stuff, like maybe sepia could help, or desaturated, or maybe film or something. So you could maybe like dabble with that to see how that helps. The other thing is, depending on the graphics card you have, obviously with the GeForce Experience, you can use the game filter stuff, and then you can actually add in like a bunch of different filters, which you have the colorblind mode, and then you can kind of screw with that, so it can kind of help you out with that. So that's something you can do. They actually have like the different ones to help out with. You can see here you can change things. So that's one of the ways you can do it if you have an NVIDIA card. I think AMD cards also offer that. I don't know about console though. Like that's not my realm, right? So I'm not Not entirely sure how that works, but there are options like that. Just not technically fully into the game. So that's the way that I would do it. But yeah, that's unfortunately the only ways I can think of. So I apologize if that doesn't appeal. I'll have a look at some more things because I am pretty much big into trying to work out ways around that stuff, you know. So we have Rapunzel. I really like the new secondary explosions for ammo racks. Love some of the sunsets on the all mats. I'm really happy lately with what Gaijin's doing. Yeah, there's been a lot of positive stuff recently, you know, which has been very good. We're probably gonna get another set of economy changes pretty soon, and also we'll probably end up getting a bunch of other changes as well, which. And then also we have the event coming up, right? Like the summer event, and then the next update. Like we're ramping up pretty aggressively now with War Thunder, and yeah, I think the last month has been pretty good. I haven't really seen anything that bad. I've personally only had a few issues with, once again, whatever they added in the last update when it comes to the way that people are facing and things. Just hasn't worked very well, but everything else looks pretty nice, you know. And I'm hoping that they continue with stuff that they're doing. Really, you know, the sound design stuff, you know, obviously we'll see what goes on, but everything is kind of all over the place. So we have Cute Poison EU. First off statement, thanks for your videos. Despite not agreeing all the time with all the points, they always offer great information and nicely structured arguments. I as well appreciate the fact that you still keep quite positive outlook on the game, unlike some other CCs who just seemingly cannot do anything but keep shitting at the game, despite stepping away and just leaving the game to rest. Understandable why, but still, over the past years, there are basically only 2 CCs I follow regularly and rotate in my whale purchasing, and about 4 additionals I no longer follow. Well, as we've talked about, unfortunately there's a monetary incentive for CCs who do this for a living to lie. So whenever money's involved in that way, you're gonna deal with some very heinous characters, just like you do in any other business, and it sucks. And it's the same with War Thunder as it is everything else. A lot of people would be in much better places mentally if they understood how to walk away or just got a standard job, but they don't. So simple as. Then we have the questions. Let's see. So we have question 1. Has there ever been an idea discussed, and if yes, where did it stop, of having actively researched vehicles bound to selected lineups? I.e., if I'm on my 10-0 lineup, I'm researching vehicle A. If I'm on my 6-7, I'm researching maybe vehicle B that was added in some previous patches and I've already surpassed. I think I actually even posted this in suggestion forum, but it got deleted. Most likely issues somewhere between my chair and keyboard on my side. So the idea is if you change the lineup you're playing, it also automatically changes the research. So I mean, technically they could do that, but I don't think it's ever been discussed because I feel like most people see that fall onto the player, right? So if you want to swap lineups, generally, you know, swapping research is one of those things you probably should do too. But yeah, I suppose it would be kind of nice to be able to tailor certain aspects of lineups to the things that you're researching, because there is a lot of times where there are like 2 things to research for me, and then what ends up happening is I end up researching like something non-efficiency compared to what it could be, because I kind of forget about it. So yeah, a system like that would be cool. I just think it hasn't ever really been discussed because it's usually fallen on the player for that kind of thing, which is generally okay. So then we have question 2. Do you perceive that the recent debacle of SL rebalancing has shifted the whole community and all discussions into more extreme levels? Like there suddenly cannot be a civil discourse and disagreement, it's either them or us, and there are certain comments, questions where if you simply don't follow the other person's opinion to the letter, you're a shill or your opinion is not relevant. It was definitely heading there, and that is where we as a society are heading. But the whole thing with the rebalancing, player union, and shitstorm around it, to me, seemed to escalate very much. So as somebody who's been on the receiving end of that stuff for years, I don't think it has escalated. I just think people just become more and more vocal because nobody batters them over the head. This is something that happens a lot, right? So if you have somebody who, hey, I took notes, nice to see you, man. If let's say you're annoyed like 3 years ago and you have a mental illness where you can't move on and you're just stuck with this thing that's annoying you constantly, even though it's a video game and you could literally just move on whenever you want, then what ends up happening is over time that person gets more and more extreme because they get more and more annoyed because for some reason they can't put a video game down. Now, we have a ton of people who have done that for literally 10 years now, where for some reason they're in a very negative headspace and they're in a horrific place, and then you get a few more people every year who agree with them. So yeah, those people do get more extreme because they finally get a following, and then everything just gets more blunt and goes forward. We've seen a general shift over the last few years, and this isn't just a Gaijin thing, but it has definitely been like a more business thing. There's so many businesses now that fold like just straight away. You've seen two sets of things, right? And both of them can be seen by Gaijin. Number one, you see social media PR people who work for these companies literally antagonize player bases or communities. So, for example, if you have a look at if you have a look at like War Thunder Twitter, for example, there's a lot of posts that people post where it's like, hey, look, isn't it cool that this guy is just he's just bullying somebody? And it's like, I mean, not really, like because they're supposed to represent the company, right? And the thing is, a lot of people go, "Oh yeah, that's awesome, that's great," but then when the company does something wrong, it switches, and then they go, look how awful the company guys are. Look at them." And what ends up happening is it's two different sets of people, and the ones who are really loud, right, and are the ultra negative guys, there isn't a ton of them if you look at the overall community. And that's the big thing. War Thunder has millions of players. At any given time, there's 100,000 plus people generally playing the game. It usually ranges from like 70,000 to 180,000, something like that. So when you think about the amount of people who are ultra negative, right, or who are, parts of this, if you have a look at like the War Thunder Player Union stuff, I think at most there was 15k people on the Discord before it got nuked by a CC that, I never want to let people forget about. If you have a look at the Reddit, there's 15.7 or 15,700 members. There are 30 people online right now, right? So, and a lot of people that I chat to were on those places to basically just see what was going on. Like, they just didn't really care. And then you had the boycott stuff, which showed that, the percentage of people who actually cared about this stuff was very small because, it just didn't really affect anything. And now the player base is increasing again, like it always does every year during this time. So, like, if you actually have a look at the general percentages, the people who usually talk are the vocal minority, which is something that gets me a lot of hatred when I talk about these things. And then we've had the new narrative, which is fun, which is just because people aren't speaking doesn't mean that they don't agree with the people that are speaking. Which is like, all right, well, if you want to say that, I need a bit of proof there, because my point is you can't tell me what people think by just saying that they think this way, right? It's just because they agree with you, you think they think that way. So yeah, that's been fun the last little bit. But no, I don't think any of this has changed. It's just because a lot of companies are reacting and saying stuff like they are actually placating people who are their consumer base. When what companies used to do is they used to just shut the shop. They would close up for like a week and then be like, okay, we hear you. Sorry about that. We'll try and improve. Now, what you see with companies is that they are constantly just trying their best to make sure to not dissatisfy people while also reaming them, which is like the big thing, right? So you have the fact that you have this like aggressive marketing, let's call it, where people dunk on them. Like if you think about like Opera GX or whatever it's called, the search engine, just go and have a look at their Twitter, or go and have a look at Wendy's Twitter, right? Stuff like that is really funny to some people, until those companies screw up. And then they're used as ammunition to go after them. And that's exactly what's going on. So the actual player base percentages of how many people are annoyed or how many people care about this stuff, yada, 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 they stay the same. What has changed is the attitude of the company on how addressing these things. And that has kind of screwed up the whole thing, right? So yeah, that's the major change that we've seen. Then we have question 3. I assume this has already been discussed and only missed it. How about separate BRs for ground and air RB, SP as well for planes? Yeah, I agree. I think it would be really nice to see. The major issue with stuff like that, at least from what I've seen talked about, is the fact that Gaijin said they can't do it. I don't know why they can't do it, but they just said it's not possible. It would solve a lot of issues for a lot of vehicles, you know? And they also said, when looking at the stats, that plenty of vehicles perform similarly in ground RB as they did in air RB, which I don't believe them. Sorry. I find it very hard to believe that specific aircraft are as capable in each of the game modes, since the game modes do appeal to different playstyles and how people play. So we would have to, that would be one of those things to sit down and have a look at, but I find that very hard to believe that something like a B5N2, for example, or even the B7A2, you know, with the Battle Pass, is that as effective in air RB as it is in ground RB? I mean, probably, maybe. The B5N2 is not, though. Definitely not. And vehicles like that, right? So yeah, the issue they said is it's not really possible to do, and also there's not really a point in going towards it because they say they can't do it because of different stuff. So at the same time they've also said a lot in the past that they can't do, and then ended up doing. So anything's possible. I hope they do it. I really do. I think it would be very useful. And anyways, keep doing what you're doing. Have a good life. I will do. Life's great right now. It's actually been really good. And August is going to be really fun as well. So looking forward to many different things. Then we have UJ Tan. Hey TEC, what do you think about Coastal being in some ground RB maps? No. No. I disagree. Coastal, maybe when it started, but then they started adding frigates to Coastal, and those things you don't want anywhere near ground RB maps. You don't want something like the SKR-7 or the Blackpool, or, you know, what the hell is that, like, that American ship? That ridiculous one. The Hoquiam. The Hoquiam, or whatever it's called. It's got 3 3-inch guns. You know, you don't want stuff like that anywhere near ground. Maybe some of the earlier stuff, but then you end up with the same situation where you have 2 sets of things that can't fight each other, and it would just annoy people, right? So, you know, maybe some of the lower tier stuff, but I think we should do Bob's thing, where we just have an event with all of them, so then we can see what it feels like, you know? Good evening, TMD. Nice to see you, man. Hopefully you're doing well, but don't just add them in straight away. I like your cut, G. Let's see. I feel that if Gaijin made it that we have a longer queue time for ground battles but increase the amount of players in a single match to 20v20 would make tank battles almost apocalyptic style, and it would be baller, to be honest. Yeah, until like 10 players are in aircraft. I mean, maybe. But I mean, right now it's 16v16 in it, so it's pretty close to 20v20. And also at the same time, it's the problem with longer queue times, right? Like, we brought it up many times. You can't guarantee the queue times will be longer. You can't guarantee the queue times won't be infinite, or even long to a point where a lot of people will not play. And that's the thing. And it's something we brought up many times, so I'm not going to go over again. Maybe we'll talk about it in like 6 months or something when people want this stuff expanded. The changes they've done to high tier to make the loading time a little bit longer is fine. It hasn't really affected that much, but you got to be a bit careful with these things because you can very quickly annihilate BR brackets. I feel like if you want that style of gameplay, though, arcade once again is probably the way to go, because you can have you know, everybody can respawn 3 times. If there's 16 people on each side, then 16 32 What, 40, 48 times 2, that's 100 people. 100 tanks either destroyed or gone around, right? So yeah. As simple as that. And we have Cal Marion. Thanks for your thoughts on my Grand EC suggestion, TEC. Always a pleasure to have an exchange of thoughts. Yeah, I agree. You know, even if it's a disagreement, it's always fantastic to do. So no one should ever be worried about their ideas being put in public. You should all want to do it no matter what the idea is. It's good to put forward your feelings and thoughts about these things. You know, never feel like people are stopping them, right? Pretty much as simple as that. The thing about it though, with the Grand DC stuff, as I said, just let's get people building these maps so people can give them a go, and then we can have some discussions about it. Practicality instead of theoretical. Let's get it done. This is Sinalra, I'm guessing, or Sinalra. I've been hoping for a sort of soft cap for war bonds or more cheap useful items to purchase, or the cheap items are limited on purchase amounts like backups and boosters. If Gaijin really wants to limit the war bond cap somewhere close to 3600 for some reason, the soft cap could be at 3600, and after that you get only half or a certain percentage of the war bonds you're supposed to get past that point. At that moment, the current hard cap is just above the price of some of the war bond vehicles. It's also very frustrating when you have, for example, 3100 war bonds, which is not enough for a higher ranked vehicle, but you'll get 850 war bonds from a battle pass level. You'll be forced to waste several hundred war bonds because there's not really any cheap options to spend, just enough war bonds on. Yeah, but that's the system's set up like that, and I agree. It's annoying as hell, and it should be different. But it's the same with premium vehicles. There's no GE vehicles which are what's the word? There are no GE vehicles that are exactly the amount of GE that you can buy. And the reason why that exists is so you either have to buy above or below the amounts and have some extra GE on. So you have that additional piece of GE that you can decide whether you want to add to it to buy something else, or maybe you can get two things, right? Like it sucks. It's a what would be classed as a soft monetization mechanic, or whatever you want to call it, a minor monetization mechanic. And they do the same thing with war bonds. It's annoying. It shouldn't exist. It does. And I agree it should be changed. Just so it benefits, the overall player instead of the company. I'm always for the player over the company on stuff like this. And we have Air Force. Tech love the videos. I'm an air arcade player. Here's my idea. I think World War I aviation can be added to the game. Gaijin could create a new rank 1 and 2. Rank 1 containing World War I aircraft, and rank 2 containing Golden Age 1920s aircraft. From there, Gaijin will have to adjust the ranks accordingly. With these two new ranks, the battle rating will have to be adjusted as well, to keep lineups in the ground RB. I think they would have to adjust the battle ratings for tanks to match the new air battle ratings, and to market it, Gaijin can sell premium packs for the two ranks that operated these aircrafts. I don't see this coming until after we have Gen 5 aircraft. I mean, yeah, when it comes to World War I stuff, right? We talked about we've talked about the fact that stuff like World War I aircraft can work in the game, and you wouldn't really be able to do it ground at all. World War I ground makes no sense at all. But yeah, aviation does at the same time for air-to-air battles. You'd have to readjust everything, but you could do that. I mean, my general thoughts of it would be, if you wanted to gauge interest with it, you sell it as a pack. So what you do is you create a rank 1 for a nation, and you only put it in like Air Arcade, or Air Realistic with smaller maps like Air Arcade maps, and then you sell it as like you can buy a premium, and then also you can like get access to some PvE content with it, maybe like a campaign that could go along with it. So you can see like some of the World War One stuff and learn the history of it, kind of like the historical campaign. Or you could maybe grind out, you know, access to the First World War stuff by doing certain challenges with the tech tree in question. I think all of that stuff would be fine, and it would once again gauge interest instead of just throwing in all this stuff. They usually gauge interest through event vehicles or through premiums, which is why you see right now some Swiss stuff turning up. It's why you saw Israeli stuff turning up before, and also why we had the T-72M1 or M2, the Moderna. Same ideas, right? They're gauging interest to see how many people are interested in these ideas, but you can't really do that with World War One stuff because, you know, the actual worth of researching them is not great. But I would definitely want to see them. The First World War naval stuff seems to work pretty well, and the aviation stuff would be great. But yeah, in ground, it's not going to be that useful. I would really enjoy like an air arcade mode with them, and I hope we see them at some point. It would be nice to see some representation. Then we have Kokoda. Australia doesn't have enough unique vehicles to make a full tree. I say this as an Australian. Yeah, you're right. And this goes to a secondary point. It's kind of funny how we have to say this, right? As a British man, I am saying this about my country, so therefore it matters more. It's so weird we live in that world. Like just as a separate point. Maybe I'll go into that idea more later on at some point. But yeah, the fact is with Australia, it doesn't have enough vehicles for a full tree. It doesn't have enough naval stuff, helicopter stuff, aviation stuff in general or ground. It needs to be subtrees, and that's fine. You get your representation, as we talked about before. So then we have, let's see, VKS Dragon. So I'd like to see subs added to War Thunder. I'm just worried about the way to combat them. From what I can see, the World of Warships ASW is lackluster, to say the least. I was hoping that we will get sonar and combat them or something of the sort. What are your thoughts on the ways to fight them, or ways they could be balanced? If not, that's okay. I was just wanting a debate with someone. Also love the tech talks. It's fine. I don't know why people want submarines. I'll never understand it. But at the same time, I don't think you can balance them, because they have something that nobody else has, the ability to submerge. And the way to generally combat them in real life and in War Thunder will be stuff like depth charges. But you'll never get close to the subs for them to do that. So, and the maps definitely don't work for subs, which is another thing as well. I think the way that you balance them is you just stick them in Naval EC, so you can go after AI targets. I honestly think they're just a PvE thing, because as vehicles in War Thunder in the PvP setting, the World War II subs I think will just catch people out, and that's all they'll do, or they'll have to force them to surface to like fire their torpedoes or something, so you can bonk on them. But any of the modern ones will just nuke the game. So yeah, I don't think there is a way that you can balance them, and that's probably why they haven't been added yet, because the models are there, all the voice lines are there. They're still probably just they might actually be adding a bunch of vehicles like the missile thing from the USSR, and also a bunch of other ones to at least have counters to these submarines. That might actually be the idea, like adding in a bunch of counters before you add them. So I don't know. We'll see what goes on. So we have the next one, which is PN or Yen C Docty. That's a toughie. Love these videos. I just have a few questions and ideas. That's a lot of ideas. Number 1. In Ground RB, aside from changing SP costs for spawning casts, why can't we or shouldn't limit how much casts can be in the air? Just how bombers have to be limited to 4 a match in RRB, which is/isn't the possibility for ground. Example: 2 aircraft, heli, 1 drone, or depending on what that aircraft loadout is. Let's say 2 aircraft with ground ordnance, and then 1 or 2 purely with the express purpose of CAS. You could limit player choice, but generally it's bad to limit player choice because you'll annoy a hell of a lot of people who want to play that stuff, which is why you've got to balance it around other factors. The reason why they did the bomber thing is because, first of all, botting, yes, early on in the game there was also botting, weird funny enough. But the other thing as well is the simple fact that it just wasn't fun. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, facing CAS isn't very fun. That was not fun. That could have actually killed the game. Like, the way that those matches were. I was there back then. Like, you would spawn in a Tempest, you'd face a full team of B-17s, and the game's done in 4 minutes. And either the B-17s screw up and aren't able to bomb you out, and then you're able to just, annihilate them, or, remember, they outturned a lot of the vehicles, so they would just go really high and you couldn't kill them, and they'd just be like a bearcat that sat there. It also happened when the Canberras got released. You just couldn't kill them. You couldn't do anything about them. They were too fast, and they just got away from everything. It was an absolute mess of a time. So that is way worse than what the CAS is now at certain levels. And since the CAS issue is not an issue at every VR, that tells me that it's something that can be fixed in those little areas instead of limiting player choice. Hey Samurai, nice to see you. If you start limiting player choice, you're going to annoy a hell of a lot of people, which is generally not the way you want to go with these things, because, it's not usually the way to go. Would it fix the problem? No, because one vehicle, like one plane, like let's say the A4E, that can kill 3 people very easily at its BR. So if you have two of those, then that's 6 people dead. They J out, and then other people just wait in the queue to get into their CAS element and waiting for the people to die. Then they die, and then they spawn in. So it would just slow down gameplay, and it would just make it very unfortunate and rough. So then we have number 2 for balancing subsonics, supersonics. Why couldn't we have a BR wall? How there once was 9710, or something I would personally like to see is a Korea Vietnam War event or similar, maybe for the anniversary or just for an event, where it's purely Sabres versus MiG-15-17 or F-4s versus MiG-21s. I know there will be vehicles that won't be easy to balance. Let's take the 9-3 Ariete against other subsonics. In my opinion, probably the best subsonic without a doubt. Same goes for Gen 3 aircraft facing Gen 4. More events is fine. It gives more data, so why not? The other thing, no, I don't need A-10s facing MiG-15s. Thanks. I also don't need Su-25s facing, G-91s. That's the issue, right? Like that. You know what caused all of these issues in the first place? It is subsonics with ridiculous weaponry. It isn't the supersonic versus subsonic thing. Because there's a lot of vehicles that sit on like the Mach 1 level, like the Tiger, right? The F1, the F11F. That is technically, I think, a 1945 vehicle, or at least around there. That vehicle can technically go supersonic, but it doesn't sit supersonic all the time. That vehicle is generally okay, if not a bit overpowered right now. But that wasn't a huge issue. These issues really started to take off when those vehicles were added. When you got these subsonics, which have ridiculous weaponry. And that's what's caused the issues. So what they need to do is they need to separate those when it comes to BRs. They can add as many walls as they want. That just changes which vehicles are popular at those BRs. If you put a wall at 9.0, then everybody plays 9.0 and everybody plays 10.3, right? Because you've artificially put it there. Does it solve the issue? Yes. Does it cause other issues? Oh, hell yes. But if it's going to work, then, let's do it. Simple as that. Number 3, since you mentioned improving the stat card, I'd like to see how many assists I've got on vehicles. Same goes for jets. Let's see how many gun missile kills I have with it. Teammates had. Yeah, sure. Why not? More stuff. More stats. God love more stats. Always fun. Number 4, I really enjoy the page of the history tasks for the unique profile icons, but I'd like to see one of the camouflages for a few vehicles at a time. Sort of how it is for decals. Or we could also take all the marketplace skins from the loot boxes and make them unlockable skins instead. Well, on the topic, how do you think we could get around the political stigma of adding Axis icons? You don't get around it. You can't. Like, it's simple as that. And it's not a stigma, right? Let's be very careful here. It is not just a stigma. These people genocided people, right? If we're talking about the German leadership. So it's not as simple as like a stigma against them. It's way more than that, you know? So for me, it's not really a surprise that that's, you know, what they're generally doing. There was actually a response. There was actually a response somewhere about the thing, and I'd have to find it. It was way back. It was somewhere. It was somewhere about it. It was. Oh, here we go. So this was from Kasan, which is a dev account. It said, "We don't plan to add avatars of the Axis countries in these events. There are serious fears of getting much more negative feedback from the general public than these infrequent requests. There is no desire to figure out who is a Nazi, who is a war criminal, etc. They are all members of an aggressive military bloc, waged an offensive war and lost it, leaving it a purely negative mark in history." So that's what the devs believe, and I think it's fair enough that they think that way. The other thing, though, yeah, it would be nice to see some more decals. It would be nice to see more camouflages and stuff. You know, more general things would be quite nice from that point. Sweet dreams, Moon. Have a nice rest, man. Like, at the end of the day, it's generally not a good idea. Like, if you have a person, like, let's say Idi Amin, right? If you have a person like Idi Amin, or if you have a person like Pol Pot or something like that, it's usually not a great idea to put them in games because it can be seen by a certain section of people to be promotion of that person, whether you believe so or not. It's just how it goes. So if you're going to use stuff like that, you do faceless figures, and you can't do that with the Page of History event because the whole point is they're not faceless figures, right? Simple as that. So it doesn't. Hey, look, Corn Dog's nice to see you, man. So yeah, it doesn't. There's a lot of countries that ban stuff like this already, which we've gone through previously. It's just not something you can get around, right? And it sucks, but welcome to welcome to how a lot of people think. Not many people are in favor of fascism and also what happened during those, and don't want to see them represented anywhere, right? So then we have the Canadian leopard. Let's do that. Question 1. What would you say about updating the flags in the hangar? For example, Germany, Russia, and Japan. Right. I think I might make a rule. 1 question per comment. Because there's been a lot of these which are like 2, 3, 4, 4 different things. Well, yeah, that's another thing, right? What type of individual would want like Himmler as a profile pic? Do you want people like that? Do you want, like, I don't know. I mean, they don't really need to update them because they still represent the the vehicles in the game. They could do something like if you have vehicles in your lineup which are from a specific sect of the country, like early 2000s Russia instead of 1980s USSR, yeah, maybe the flags change, but yeah, it's as simple as that. Like, they could do that, and I don't see why not. Question 2, I would like to see modern versions of maps like Berlin or Advanced to the Rhine, look not like the World War II versions, so it wouldn't be just a reskin. What's your opinion on this topic? Yeah, I think something like a 1960s Berlin or something would be fine. One of the things I always thought would be interesting is a lot of these city maps, the ones which are destroyed, you could do them before they get destroyed, or the ones which are destroyed, you could do them after. Sorry, which aren't destroyed, you could do them after they get destroyed. So, for example, you know how you have Alaska, and then you have the nuked Alaska, things like that. Like, what if they did like 1920s Berlin, right? So they could do stuff like that, and it would be kind of interesting. So you have like the destroyed version, and then like the undestroyed version, map of like central London or Paris, which isn't blitzed. You know, you could do stuff like that. Like, I'd be fine with that. I think it would be cool to see different stuff, which would be nice. I'm all down for that. So then we have Clats, 70 ms. Wow, I'd love that. My lowest I've ever gotten is around 250. That is insane. People even complain about sub 100. The downside of being from Australian SEA being so inconsistent, EU and RU being over 400, and US averaging around 280, 350. Yeah, I know, but people complain about their own experiences and don't take into account anybody else's. That's like the standard person, by the way. Like whenever you're chatting to somebody, if they're just a random individual, that's the mindset that they'll have. This thing affects me, I want this fixed, right? Like that's how it goes. Without any thought or without any kind of like talk to like any other people, it's very personal, which is what happens a lot in War Thunder, which is why you get a metric ton of personal opinions from people, and then you find out how many different people have those personal opinions. That's just how that goes, right? It's just how it is. So yeah, it sucks, and I wish we could have more like overall chats about how this affects different people and also going from it, but there's too many eyes instead of we's, right? Freeman plays on very hyping. Then we have Creation, Tiger 1, that front left ammo rack you cannot empty. If we could fill any other set of racks, might make it a little less frustrating. Yeah, this was in relation to we talked about the ammo thing, right? So you would be able to choose where you put the ammo, but then it would affect the reload. Like stuff like that would be really cool. But also at the same time, I don't know how much it would go for, right? But yeah, I think overall that'd be nice. So then you have Lewis MK10. Thanks for reading out my question from the last episode, much appreciated. Do you think Gaijin plan on re-releasing past Battle Pass vehicles from previous seasons? No, I don't think so. At least not for a while. Like there's a lot of Battle Pass vehicles. Like we've had like what 10, 12 seasons of the Battle Pass, so it's been going for what, 3 or 4 years at this point, because you get like 3 a year now, where before it was like 4 a year. So maybe in like 3 or 4 years time, I think they should re-release them. The issue is obviously you have like the Gaijin market stuff, right? So a lot of those vehicles are available on the Gaijin market, and that means that there's a monetary incentive for them to not bring them back. For the vehicles that aren't on the thing, yeah, you could do that. Like it could work pretty well. And I think more people who have access to more things is always going to be better than not having access to different things. So I would just want them brought back all the time. So why not? You know, I don't think they will for a while though, but I think eventually they will. I just don't know how they'll bring them back, whether it's like coupon trades or whether it's like different things like that. This is just based on the reference of like past event vehicles. Like a lot of past event vehicles, what they've done is they've actually brought them back as the box vehicles, like the camo box vehicles, which in my opinion is not a good way of bringing them back. But yeah. So we have Lewis Bush. I don't know if you guys were around back on this game, but they had an event when you could play subs. Easy to say back then, they sucked. I just don't think they'll work unless you entirely flesh out the naval trees. Basically turn the naval tree into the air tree so you can have people chase subs down and drop depth charges on them. Or you could use planes with depth charges like the PBY. It'd be cool, but it'd be a lot of work. Yeah, it was awful. They brought them in the in a few years ago, and for an April Fool's thing, and it was awful. It was so boring and it was so dull, and also it crashed a lot of people's games, including mine. and there was a ton of exploits in it as well. And then they brought it back again, and there was a bunch of bugs with it, which they then had to like remove it after a day or 2 days because it was fundamentally broken. And what happened was if a sub like went above the waterline, it would just gain a ridiculous amount of speed and then it would fly off into space. But there was a bunch of other bugs with it as well, such as game crashing bugs. So I don't know. We'll have to see what goes on with it. But for me, yeah, it was just awful. And I'm hoping that when they do add in subs, because they are going to add in subs, I just hope that they feel good, you know, and hope that they're balanced. Like there's been a lot of things they've added to War Thunder, which at least for me, I didn't think was going to work very well, but they did. So I'm hoping I'm wrong on this one as well. Emergency broadcast system. Nice to see you again. I made a bug report for the striker's turn diameter, which after testing in game, I found it to be twice as large compared to in real life. I included some online sources and an actual photo of the real striker with its wheel turned at about double the angle compared to the model in game. Unfortunately though, a few hours after posting it, a certain moderator, who was pretty well known for approving certains without any sources or making excuses for stuff for depending on the country it's for, labelled it as not a bug without any explanation. I guess it's technically not a bug and it's a historical accuracy, but I don't see it anywhere on the forums to post it now that they restructured it. Should I just resubmit it at a different time and hope a different moderator gets to it first, or is there something else I should do? There's actually a specific site you're supposed to bug report stuff in. So that's why. Let's see. There's like a bug reporting site. Yeah, gaijin.net/issues. So that's I'll put it in the chat. That's basically where you're supposed to do these things. So just do it there. Like it that's pretty much why. You run into the same issues that everybody else runs into. But yeah, it's just how it goes. Like you just got to make sure you have as much information as possible, make sure you know the rules, and then kind of go from there, and then have a good time. So yeah, just make sure to get it in. It's always good to push these through, even if you run into certain moderators. You know, we've talked about a few issues in the past with these things, so yeah, it is kind of how it is. So we have C76 Caravan. If you can have one of the following old removed mechanics settings back, which one would you like to see returned? Realistic matchmaking? No, it was never realistic, but definitely not. Proximity score reward and or bouncing shots reward. I mean, maybe. Damage to tanks if crashing in a way that would also cause damage in real world. Damage to tanks if crash... Oh, so like if you run into a tree or whatever, you can still do that. So that's still there, it's just lessened. Daily ×2 and weekend ×5. Individual crew members on ships instead of percentage. I thought it was always percentage, wasn't it? Historic events on the weekend. So just for fun, maybe a small decal as a reward, but nothing that causes FOMO. I mean, going on the historical stuff, I'd like to see the historical decals back. They removed them like more than half a year ago and they just haven't turned up. So that would be cool. I'd like to see those. That would be nice. If these were the choices, I would go for the proximity score reward and I suppose the ×2 and ×5. Those are the ones that appeal to me the most. The ×2 and the ×5 is kind of coming back though, in the form that they're bringing it back in the next setup, which is good. But yeah, the proximity thing, I don't ever want realistic matchmaking again. It literally doesn't work. You look like, where do you put stuff like Israel? Where do you put stuff like Sweden? Like, where do you put World War II Sweden? Do you just say it's an allies? I mean, maybe, but it wasn't, so I don't know. But yeah, that would probably be the things. I can think about other things I would prefer to be returned than those, though, just in general. The economy update's supposed to be in the summer, so we have a month left. So then we have Nech Chiaho. Do you think that with the addition of subs, we'll get stuff like sonar, better SWs, and more weapons for planes? No, they're just going to take over the game. Yeah, of course we're going to get more random stuff added to the game. People need to stop focusing on submarines. It's getting boring now. The submarines are going to want... We talked about this like a few weeks ago. Submarines are one of those things that a lot of people bring up and a lot of people talk about because they're not in the game. And also at the same time, we had a bunch of audio things added. Once they're added, nobody's going to care about them. Like, it's another one of those things, man. Like, they're just going to add, and then they're just going to disappear. There's going to be, like, no videos on them. There's going to be, like, nobody really playing them. It's just how it is, right? So, I want Gaijin to bring them in so I can play them a bit, and a few other people can play them a bit, and then we can just stop talking about them. I think that would be grand, right? Same with, like, the battleship stuff and all of that. So we can just give them a go, see what the mechanics are going to be like, see how they're going to work, and then we can start answering some of these questions. Hey, Gaj, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good today. So then we have Wholesome. Hey, Tech, I don't know if you talked about it before, if it's interesting enough, but the government of Italy seems to be in the process of acquiring Leopard 2A7s. I'm curious to know your opinion, and if how you think Gaijin would bring the 2A7 to the Italians, or how fast they could implement it. Personally think this would transform the Italians. Thanks. I mean, I suppose. I mean, they could just add it right now if they wanted, you know. So if they really felt like it, they could just add it in. It doesn't really matter. Like I mean, I'd rather they did what they were going to do with I would rather they did what they were going to do with Italy anyway, which was add a bunch of subtrees to it. So hopefully they do that first, and then they move on to the other things. It also opens the door for a bunch of other stuff, like the Taiwanese Abrams, for example, if they're going to do that. But yeah, Italy's got a few more issues than its MBT, but they could fix that with just adding the MBT. They could add just a bunch of other stuff as well to it. Doesn't have to be an MBT, but you know, it could work. I'd be fine with it. Just go nuts. So we have Lipson. Would increasing SP for CAS help the ground RB after SAM nerf top tier tanks were unplayable instant revenge bombing? I mean, it would weaken CAS, yeah, but people would just find different ways of getting into it unless you really went a little bit crazy. So yeah, yeah, they could do that. Sounds good to me. RIBAC with respawns like in Simulator, maybe spotting might be turned off for enemy vehicles, so radars would be useful. Just play SP then. 3. Why Gaijin haven't already added ability to pop flares and chaff separately? Don't know. I've no idea. I don't know if there is a way to do it. There probably is, but it just is how it is. So it's just a vehicle that, you know, we've talked about many times, and the general countermeasures idea of being able to split them independently. Don't know if you can do it in real life or not. If you can do it in real life, then you should be able to do it in game. Simple as. Might be because they don't want to put two buttons to the same thing. I don't know. We'll see. So we have Kraus. Could you give any advice on finding the effective range of destroyer guns? I tried out Naval again this week and was unable to hit anything over 5k. Done my entire ammo stock without a single hit, even against ships moving with the same direction and speed, which should be the ideal situation. You could watch my naval aiming video, where I talk about how to aim properly in naval. It's in the War Thunder Tips event, or the War Thunder Tips playlist, and also the Beginner's Guide. I go through all of the different things when it comes to aiming with naval, and how you should aim, and what helps with it. So you could watch that. I do agree with you in theory about keeping high tiers available to noobs, because everyone should be able to play whoever they like so long as they're not intentionally griefing. Still frustrating though, since there are always noobs to replace the ones who learn to play a high tier. Yeah, I agree, but I don't think the vast majority of people are griefing, so you need to bring in rules to be able to stop the minority annihilating the game for the majority, and the way that you bring these in is to start banning players for griefing, which is something that they do, but they should do it more aggressively. Also, your opinion on drones is a bit weird. Enemy tanks can end you without being heard or seen and having no way to counter them. In fact, tanks are much more likely to send you back to the hangar than CAS. And tank rounds at high tier move over 1,000 meters per second with a point and click rather than something like an ATGM, which has to be aimed and sometimes launched from a vehicle, which has to maneuver to avoid AA. I disagree. The main issue is it's not the speed of the round or the speed of the munition. It is the angle and the plane of it. So generally when it comes to tanks, right? So especially at high tiers, tanks are on mainly a horizontal plane. There's some verticality to it, but there's not a lot, right? So your general eyes are looking on a horizontal plane. So you're looking all around, and also by the time you're at high tiers, you usually know the power positions where most people sit, and usually if somebody shoots, you can see the muzzle flash and then all of that. So you're looking for it on a horizontal plane. If something is directly above your head, and you can't hear it, and you can't see it, and also at the same time you might be engaged on that horizontal plane, then you're not going to be able to see the drone, right? So you can't see it, you don't know it's there, you can't hear it, you can't do any of that, and you're focused on the horizontal plane because the vast majority of targets that you're facing are on the horizontal plane. Then you just get hit by a missile you can't hear, and you die instantly. If you get shot by a ground vehicle in the same scenario, it's only on one plane. So therefore you can actually counter against that because you can tell, at least through the kill cam and stuff, where he is. Maybe you can watch for that position next time. Maybe you can have a look at different areas and like kind of work out how to counter that position. If a drone hits you from above you, there's no counter to it. I don't learn anything from dying to a drone. Right? I learn that somebody capped a point and then got in a drone because they can't grind out top tier aviation. I haven't done it yet, so they hover over my head and kill me. I don't learn anything from that situation. If another ground vehicle kills me, I can work out where he was. I can then think about counters to that position, and I can then like move around from there, right? But you can't do that with drones. There's no counterplay to it, which is the frustrating thing about it. The counterplay to it is to hope people don't spawn in drones or preemptively spawn in an AA, which then makes the first problem more of an issue, which we talked about, which is the tank-on-tank thing. So it's just the fact that you can't do anything about it. You can do stuff about ground vehicles. There's way of putting terrain, between you. There's way of like checking these areas, which is much more natural than just looking above your head constantly to see if stuff is there, which you can't see anyway because it's tiny. So yeah, it's just more about like the counter thing that we talked about and the planes. So you have the horizontal, the vertical, and then you have both, right? So yeah, you can focus on the X plane quite easily in ground, but if then you incorporate the Y plane, it becomes a lot harder. But thank you for the thoughts, Kraus. That's very kind of you. So we have Paulie LDP. When I mention Australian-Canadian tree, I'd be hoping for an independent tree. We would still see a lot of exclusions as subtrees in the UK. On that topic though, console could really use access to the marketplace. I don't know why we don't get it, but I have numerous vehicle coupons I'd sell for something like the QF37 Ram, and I'd really like the dark blue Royal Australian Navy Sea Fury skin. Yeah, that one's actually really good, I like it too. Like what you were using the other day. Without an independent tree, I'll never see that skin on console. And currently, the way they're adding vehicles, I won't be able to play high-tier Australian lineups. With the M1A1 AIM and the US tree, if they added, let's say, the Boxer CRV with the spikes and our version of the Tiger attack helicopter, I couldn't play them together. Even a Leopard AS1, AS9 Huntsman, and ASLAV could be in different trees to each other. Those three could, in theory, be a similar BR lineup together. That's fair, but I'm not... So, number one, why does it matter that they're in the same lineup, right? Why is that a consideration that goes through the head? If the only reason is like some kind of like nationalistic beliefs or just wanting to see them together, even though in real life they don't fight alongside each other in that way, then fair enough. But at the same time, you could say that about a lot of things like in the game, right? And hoping that they're all the same BR and all of that. Number two is, would you prefer these things to be added into the game in that way and nobody play them because they're in significantly weaker lineups than you would see in other areas? Or would you like them be played and be represented in the game by being in these different lineups? And if if the belief is number one, that's fine. You know, it is good and it is okay and whatever, but it's still not that cool, right? Because you just will never see them in game. Nobody will play them, right? The demand is just not there. You could also add a subtree with all of these in the same subtree, so you could see them all in the same lineup. That's the thing. Like all of these things can happen in a subtree still. Once again, look at South Africa. They have ground vehicles in the British tech tree. They also have the Royvalk, which is a helicopter. Same situation could happen with Australia. You could play them all together, right? Just because the M1A1 aims in the US tree doesn't mean they can't put it in the British tree too. Just not as a squad vehicle, as just a standard vehicle. They've done that many times as well. They could call it the M1A1 AIM 2. And it's just, I don't know, got a different sticker. So they could do these things. I agree that console should have access to the market. I think if you have a think about it, Gaijin would want everyone to get access to the market because it would make them more money and also unify everything so they wouldn't have to put more development time into events such as the Build-A-Bear events to be able to push forward with them. So if we go from that route, why would the consoles not get access to the market? It would be the same reason why other games don't. In that setup, it's because of the fact that you have to deal with a third party company, so Sony or Microsoft. And Sony and Microsoft, if you actually have a look at the deals that Sony's done in the past when it comes to these types of markets, they want control of the market, or they want a very high percentage of overall purchases. So not just console purchases, but PC purchases too. And War Thunder, as a game, was actually the first cross-platform, Gaijin, I can't remember if it was War Thunder, but they were the first people to actually get a cross-platform game to exist. A lot of people think it was Fortnite, but Gaijin was actually their first, weirdly enough. I think it was either Crossout or War Thunder, I can't remember which one. So the simple thing is obviously these discussions are ongoing with the sales and everything like that, but if there was a possibility to do it, you know for a fact that Gaijin would want to do it. So the question is, what is in the way? And the only thing that can be a way is the discussions between them and the company and them breaking down. So yeah. Hey Hans, nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Chicken Choker. Hopefully you're doing well. We're just doing the tech talk, so going through a bunch of things, having a good chat. So then we have Jeffrey. I really do hope Gaijin adds a South Korean tech tree and a North Korean subtree for China. I agree, but the South Korean tech tree should also be a subtree of a different nation. Then we have Jerry. Do you think that the ATGM nerf should be reverted? Yes, actually. If they don't modify the BRs of a lot of these vehicles, and they leave a lot of them where they are, such as the M113A1 TOW, then they should revert the changes. I specifically don't want to play a lot of these ATGM carriers now because they are now frustrating to play. Incredibly frustrating. And since a lot of them have pretty high BRs based on the old mechanics, I'm hoping they change. If not, then they should revert them and then still think about those vehicles. So, yeah. Here we go. So we have Tadamat from Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic. Hello there. I know your opinion on new tech trees is that no new independent nation should be added to the game, but in my opinion, adding all the new nations as subtrees or mixed in with another nation isn't as simple as it may seem. There are still some countries that have very rich military industry which produce many indigenous designs and upgrade a dozen of some foreign ones. For example, Czechoslovakia, which doesn't exist anymore, can possibly bring dozens or even hundreds of unique vehicles into the game, over 230 unique vehicles in total, of which about 160 are fully domestic design. If you wanted to put such a nation into the game, such as a subtree, just about 20 or so of those vehicles would ever see the light of day, which would be quite disappointing. Mixing it in with Poland, for example, also wouldn't really solve the problem, as the tree would either be way too big to be enjoyable, or would also lack large parts of the interesting vehicles. Some of your arguments against independent nations in the past included the need for players to start with new and experienced crews, and the need to research spade more vehicles to unlock everything in the game. But from my experience, most of the players don't care about these problems. Most people don't care if they have unlocked everything, or if they have haze crews. Only a small minority of the player base does. So the question is, do you think it's better to add other nations as subtrees or mix with other nations just because it would ease the overall grind, even though it would mean quite a lot of unique and interesting vehicles wouldn't get added into the game as a result? I guess good, but my holiday roommates in SGF thinks that they're unhearable, but they so much more than hearable, and it's annoying that he can't even get after 2 hours. I just want to sleep. It's frustrating. My boy's on those rhino pills. Let's go. Fucking, he's smashing. Nice. I'll try and help the best I can. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, back to the things. The vast majority of people in War Thunder don't play multiple nations. Most of them play one, if not two nations. So they're not going to be bothered about zero crew skills because they don't start other nations. They only play a very small amount of them. So that is not going to affect them. So of course they're not going to worry about it because it literally doesn't affect them. As we talked about before, the whole personal experience thing and personal opinions, that's what people go on. There is no reason why you can't add all of these vehicles if you want to another nation. The only reason you don't want to add them to it is because it would bloat that nation or they wouldn't be played. First of all, if the vehicles are good enough, especially if added to a nation which is good enough, they'll get played, right? If you put them in their own independent tech tree, they won't get played. If you actually have a look at a lot of the nations which have been struggling over the last little bit, Israel, once again, in War Thunder is one of those things. Sweden, France, these nations already hardly get played by people. So putting them in an independent tech tree means that they actually get played less than if they're in a pre-existing tech tree, because there is already a player base which is playing that tech tree and they'll want to get the new vehicles. So this idea that you've made up in your head about how people just wouldn't play them for some reason, or they would add less than what is available, that's just not true. You've added that in your head so you can have an independent tech tree. You have no basis for this. There is no examples that you can bring forward for this. There is nothing that can be said about it. It is much better to add them to a pre-existing one because it has a player base there, because you don't have to worry about crew skills, and because you can add as many as you want to it. You can add all the 230 if you want to that individual tech tree, and now you've just made a better experience for most people. Get away from this independent notion. You will have the flag. The flag is there. This idea that you won't get all those vehicles added because you feel like they won't fit in a line. They don't have to be in a line, right? They could literally be in 3 separate lines. It doesn't matter. You can add them all to another nation. Just don't call it like that nation. Easy. Done. Fixed. But yeah. And there isn't 160 fully domestic, well, first of all, fully domestic designs. Whatever that means. I've seen all the Czechoslovakian tech trees. I've seen them all. Okay? Not good. So then we have just 40. And it's literally as simple as that. Just take all of the vehicles that you think can be added for a nation and just put them in another tech tree as a subtree.
Stop making these rules in your head about why it can't happen, right? Because you have no example basis, or you have no basis to actually believe this stuff. You're just making shit up in your head, so therefore, so you can have your nation in the game, and then just randomly adding them to Poland, because why the hell not? Why can't Poland get its own independent tech tree? Why can't Czech get its own independent tech tree? Why do you have to add other nations to them? Surely you'll diminish those vehicles like you think will be diminished in the other trees, because people won't play them, because they'll be the dominant nation, and people will play them and not the other ones for some reason. Same idea. Like, what's the point? I just give it up and just stick them in places where people will play. We have precedents for all of this stuff for many years now. Just stop. We don't need another nation in the game that doesn't exist anymore. There's enough of them. Just stick the vehicles in other tech trees. Done. And then you can enjoy them. Right, so then we have just for YouTube, or YT, just a few things. As a console player, I feel like top tier is mostly impossible to play in a way. This question will go into the next question, because I just want to get to 8.7 or 7.0 in the tech tree. What nation do you think is the best at 7.077 or 8.087? 7.077 is probably USSR at the moment. 8.087... Sweden? Probably, weirdly enough. Sweden's very good. 8.087. So yeah, those two. At the right angle, you pen a T50 where the turret meets the hull with a 792. Yeah, there's a hole in the armor. They need to fix it. It's a bug. There's quite a lot of vehicles that have issues like that. Alright. The British ADATS is still called the ADATS and not the XM 1069. Bug report it. Why do some BRs don't exist? Like, I think 6.7 always being updated, 7.377. I made a bunch of videos about the human element of matchmaking over the years. The basic reason is because there are black hole BRs and there are meta BRs. So certain nations which are very powerful have lineups at specific BRs which are incredibly good. 7.0 USSR, 7.3 Germany, 7.7 US. This means that BRs which are around it, 6.3, 6.7, 8.0, usually get pushed into this BR bracket because those are where the meta BRs are. This happens way more aggressively in aviation than it does in ground. What this means is everything gets sucked into a black hole or sucked into a certain BR range, which creates other like BR brackets which just have nothing fighting in it. If you have, let's say, 7.3 to 8.3 as a meta BR, then you have 8.7. 8.7 then indefinitely becomes a meta BR, or because there's not enough vehicles there because they've all been sucked into either 8.3 or they've been sucked into 9.0, that means that 8.7 doesn't exist, so it just gets beaten up by everything else. There's many different examples over the years where this has happened. It's something that happens constantly, and why they can't just decompress BRs to a ridiculous level, because otherwise you create too many of these holes, and therefore queue times will get longer, or you would only see the same vehicles over and over again, or the game would just die, because you would research a vehicle up to a level, and then there isn't any vehicles that people play in those BRs, so therefore you couldn't actually find a match. So that's why. Why do boosters have a time limit? Is it because of FOMO or something else? FOMO, basically. Not all boosters have time limits, but yeah, FOMO is basically why. Well, it's actually not FOMO. It's just more like, it's just more they want you to use it and they want you to play more. So if they put a time limit on it, and then if you put a time limit on something, and let's say it's 10 matches, then now you want to play 10 more matches, right? Because, yeah, well, I suppose it is FOMO. Yeah, it's just depends on how you look at it. If Gaijin were to run out of vehicles to add, what would they do? I mean, they would probably just keep doing events of recycled vehicles over and over again. Or, once again, fake vehicles that we talked about before. Get into the paper designs and all that. I mean, they're already doing that, so they'll just do it more. If you were to get rid of one of the major nations in the game, obviously, what would it be and why? can't be because of the type of players that play it. Yes, I like it when you call people idiots. It's funny. Well, yeah, sometimes I get annoyed, but I shouldn't really do it. It's a bit harsh. But I would actually remove the US, and I know that's very controversial, but I'll explain why. One of the issues with the US in War Thunder is that they dominate aviation right now, and that would never change. And they also dominate naval, and that will also never change. So it's more of a pick of removing a nation which kind of annihilates BR brackets. But I wouldn't really want to remove a nation, but that's what I would do. The one which has the biggest effect on the meta right now, which would change things up the most, and that is right now US. If you're talking about like ground, it's probably Germany or USSR, but I think if you just have a look at overall, the US has more of an influence than many others. So we have Pensive. I feel so left out now. My friends at 10 and 13 nukes each, and 3 of them in the last 2 weeks after I complained about missing mine. Stop worrying about getting nukes. There is more to life. Go work out. Go lift weights. Eat healthy. Read books, you know. Get on Tinder, you know. Go down back alleys. Do some weird stuff. Have fun. You'll be fine. Then we have Adam Dubicki. Is there a chance to add South Korea and Poland as independent tech trees for the next 2 years or as sub-trees? Next 2 years? That's weird. If it was possible to add Poland as a sub-tree, where would you put it? Personally, I think it would be a bad idea to put Poland in the German tree and catastrophically put it in the Russian one. I would add South Korea to Japan or America, and I would add Poland to Britain or Italy, depending on how I was feeling for that day. I would flip a coin. Generally, minor nations should be pushed for when it comes to these subtrees to try and get people to play them more, and that would be the way to push it forward. So yeah, I would prefer South Korea going to. I would prefer South Korea going to Japan and Poland going to Italy, but if they end up in Britain or the US, then I think that's generally okay. And we have Abdella Hie Ramo. Awesome talk, thank you. It's very kind. I enjoy doing this. My voice is dying a bit, but we'll be fine. We'll keep going. Fired fuel. Okay. Some person can grind out a whole tree in 4 days or a week or so. But it may take somebody a year because they have a life. They may have school work and they may not have very much time at the end of the day to play War Thunder. It's always good to get out and have fun and take a walk. Plus, it's always good to enjoy a game for a long period of time instead of getting burnt out of it. I 100% agree. That's why I don't think... people should focus on the grind and should focus on improving their lives. And, you know, I think video games should be a secondary or tertiary, even I don't even know what it's called, a quadversary part of your life. You know, it shouldn't be something which is focused on a heavy amount if you don't have all the other stuff in order. So yeah. If you're focusing on school or work or focusing on being healthy or focusing on anything like that, that's good. You should focus on that first. War Thunder shouldn't even be a thought. If you have all those things sorted out and then focusing on parts of War Thunder, then that's okay. But still, you should focus on all the other parts way before that, right? Simple as that. Alright. So then we have Taki-chan. Which of the two problems is more destructive to the game as a whole? Okay. Numero uno. Tech trees being full of copy-paste Israel and few folded vehicles of the high tiers. What comes to mind are 5 Challenger 2s and Abrams tanks that have minimal differences from one another, where A few should be put in folders to ease the grind. The Challenger TES could be folded with the Challenger 2F, and the M1A1HC could be folded with the M1A1, just to name a few. I'm sure air trees are similar, and you could think of the similar vehicles in general. Number 2, Gaijin as a company being reactive rather than proactive when it comes to changes in BR altering a vehicle. For example, adding a Puma at a low BR, which broke the BR bracket until it was moved up a week or two later, or more recently altering missile platforms without adjusting their respective BRs to compensate. As a company, I could understand the benefits of being reactive, but as a player, I wish they had the foresight to make changes before they become problems. I mean, obviously number 2 is way more destructive than number 1. Number 1, once somebody is at the high tiers of the game, once somebody is at the highest echelon of the game, grinding is not something that I feel like Gaijin is hugely bothered about from that point. So that's something that affects a very small amount of people. Whereas if you talk about the reactive proactive thing, that affects everybody. So it's just a numbers game. So number 2 is definitely it. And the whole minimal differences thing, the reason they did that is because a lot of nations just didn't have lineups at certain BRs, and that is a problem. And so that's why they started adding in these copy paste things at the highest echelon, and I think that's generally fine. But they are going to folder some of them, or probably going to folder some of them, which will be nice. But I feel that's not, you know, if we talk about like overall problems of the game, that's a very, very small thing compared to proactive, reactive decision making. Is there a solution, or do you think it's all intentional and strategic by Gaijin? Now that I think about it, Puma was probably intentional to get people to grind for it / spend money. I mean, if they're going to do that, they should have done it with a premium, which they have done, the SU-25 and Harrier GR1. No, I don't think they're fully intentional. I think some of them definitely feel like it. I just as anything when it's actually like sorted out, or when anything is discussed, sometimes people just get stuff wrong. And when you have thousands upon thousands of things going on at once when it comes to War Thunder, sometimes you get 1 or 2 things wrong, right? And that's just what happens at the end of the day. So for me, that's just reality. Like, it's if you have, let's say every 2 or 3 months you have a massive update to a project that you're doing, and that update changes 300 separate things, right? So you have that 5 times a year. Now, so that's 1,500 changes, right? 1,500 changes. And per update, 2 or 3 or 5 things go wrong. Now, if you do it percentage-wise, that's not actually that bad. But because of social media and the way it works, it gets amplified to a crazy amount. And also, there's monetary incentive. The thing that should be asked is, do you think these are intentional or strategic? No, because I can point to things on the other side of things where they've put vehicles at too high of a BR and they've had to lower them. Sturm S, Chrysanthema are 2 vehicles that are very easy to point towards. So yeah, it's just a numbers game at the end of the day. 2 house, or 2 thos, or twat house. What about a ground DC, but including rail lines and being able to spawn at fobs and whatnot? Make it. War Thunder CDK is calling your name. Make it now. Get people to play it. See their opinions. Bum ba da ba. Easy. You can actually unlock different spawns after specific times. Do it. Do it! Hey Joe and Detrego, nice to see you, man. Nice to see you, Special Donkey. Nice to see you enjoyed the movie. Denisha Koju. The Tu-95 at 8.3 is much faster. It's newer, and I think has a better payload. Just to help the Tu-473 a bit. Screw it even. At the B-52A3 as well, to help the B-2973. That face early jet. I don't think they need too much help, but why not? Go crazy. So we have LX Tav. Hey Tech, sorry for asking a similar question to last week, but I think my terrible grammar messed things up. That's alright. Do you think that the future of British Air will lean more towards Commonwealth aircraft such as CF-18 or towards prototype indigenous designs such as the BAE P-1216 or the F-111K that sits somewhere between the AC-141 and F-16AJ in credibility? Well, the F-111K I don't think was ever finished, right? But I see what you mean. P.S. You should really look at some of the wacky stuff that Britain designed, like Cold War, like the supersonic VTOL, with no way for the pilot to see outside. I've seen some of the crazy designs they made, crazy designs they had. They didn't build them, but they're pretty interesting to look at. I think the Commonwealth thing is more what they'll lean towards to start with, just because there's more information on them, and also it's probably easier to do than the other opposite, which is indigenous designs. Think about all those like prototypes. They have to like make the models for each of them, and you know, instead of like just doing the Phantoms, which is what they did in the past, and obviously the Tornadoes, they can reproduce a lot of the time. So yeah, I think the Commonwealth ones make more sense if those are the two options. Just because once again, more information, and also works on pre-existing designs. David Garcia. Ever since they added the AFS modification for aircraft, I spent countless hours having to respade tons of rank 1, 2, and 3 props that I already had spaded that I honestly don't want to play anymore, especially the rank 1 stuff. Yep, same position. It sucks. Along with this, the top tier modification situation, although better, is still disgusting with the seemingly endless stock experience. It has made me not want to play any of the top tier event vehicles I've gotten. So I just have a bunch of stock toys catching dust in a metaphorical shelf. We're in a very similar position. Like, I completely concur. I feel like the modification system represents some of the bigger issues in the game at the moment. From my perspective, most players I know, other than myself, don't even care to spade vehicles anyway, and they don't feel any satisfaction of slowly improving a vehicle, since basically half of the mods are nearly useless, and then there's the good round mod and movement mods, ones which are the ones you want, after which you're basically just looking at a progress bar of RP until you get the spade. Agreed. How can you balance things, making the stock experience less painful while also still giving a reason to spade vehicles? Do you think the system needs some kind of overhaul, and how would you apply it? I mean, I would rather we live in a world where spading vehicles was not something that had to be done in order for a vehicle to feel correct. So the way you do it is by BR differences between stock vehicles and spaded ones, or you remove the usefulness of the modifications. I understand the whole idea of wanting to spade vehicles, because that's basically what I do, but also at the same time, I think it would be better for the game if there was less required. Or if there was not as much of an emphasis on spading a vehicle. So I think it would be better. F5C Sauce Muller. Or the F4S. Exclamation mark partner. Personally, I think there should be no unlockable rounds or munitions capabilities, which drastically affect the performance. For ground vehicles specifically, the movement mods I feel are good, and they improve the tank without making it useless, same for vertical horizontal, but maybe give more importance to the suspension brake system. Another thing I would like to see is more RP rewards for finishing tiers of modifications. This incentivizes players to spade and play more vehicles. Makes the grind ever so slightly easier, and bodders don't benefit from it since they only use the same vehicles. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, sure. I'm down for that. I've always liked the idea of well, I know what the F-111K was, because it was chosen over the TSR-2 and then neither happened. I've always liked the idea of, with ammunition, you get a maximum amount of a certain ammunition you can bring, and then after you get the modification, you can have your whole ammo be that ammunition. So let's say if you haven't unlocked M833 round, you'll be able to stock 5 of them in your vehicle. And then when you get the modification, you're able to bring as many as you want to what the vehicle can carry. I always thought that was a better idea compared to other things. So that's what I would do, personally. Keep the good content, and thanks for your time, anytime. We seem to think very similarly, which is quite cool. Ooh, right. So we have Maxall. Firstly, you can call me Maxall if you want. Ignore the other letters. Oh, hello, Tech. Sorry about that. Right, yeah, as I said, 1 question per person next time. So if there is multiple questions, we just do the top one. 1, I would like to see some sort shorter video or video series about the maps. For example, you can have a video per map in which you say which is a good or bad map, for what BR range and stuff like that. I think it will help people with the map positions. I wanted to do that, but I'm now waiting for them to rejig the maps, because over the last year or so they've done a bunch of map changes, meaning that I could have made videos like this and then, you know, they'll be done for. Because they're going to change them up. So I'm waiting for the map changes to come in, and then I'm going to do that video series that we've talked about for a long time. Just get it done. It's not going to age well, but it doesn't matter. We'll just do it. Number 2, since, as you say, they stopped caring so much about historical accuracy, should the removed German tanks return? I have them, but it's unfair for people to miss out on a 6-7 medium as good as the Panther II. Yes, they should return them. Simple as that. They should return them. If this is the hill they want to die on, then it's a very poor hill. So yeah. Number 3. This is a weird thing, but hear me out. There obviously is no need for 1,000,000 Magacs. What if instead you can have a vehicle like the 2A4 and you would choose which variant to have? Greek, Turkish, German, etc. It would be a good way to have smaller nations in the game, or do you think we should keep it as it is with user skins? So just like switch the vehicle nation? Would you research different stuff with the vehicle? I mean, they could do that, but I would prefer if you could just research everything with the vehicle. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. They could add, instead of user skins for that stuff, they could add actual camouflages from those nations. That could be a good idea. I kind of like that idea, in general. Then we have common sense. Yeah, let's change what's showing on the VLC. We've done enough ground stuff. Gonna have some, you can enjoy some air. How about that? Where is it? There it is. Good old F9F Cougar. I have so many weird vehicles here. There we go. That's some wonderful J32B. So this is common sense. As a 2-year Air ABRB, ranked 6-7 All Nations player, who just started into Ground RB, Tier 3 All Nation now. Cass can fuck off. A Canada Commonwealth texture would be cool. Cass can be incredibly annoying, I agree. It is very annoying. And, I mean, yeah, Commonwealth tree would be fine. Just, just change the British tree into the Commonwealth tree. Seems to be a good idea. Why not? Grievous-minded. If you want to see certain maps more often, simply give them a thumbs up or even a heart. Thumbs down for those you can't see anymore. I think people are not aware of the options menu in the game mode screen. Yeah, that could actually be a very good point. Let's show it. So if you didn't know, there's a map rotation filter in the game. So what this basically means... Why is my camera so fucked? What did I do? So if you go to this, and you go to this area, you can actually click this, and then you can like, dislike, and ban certain maps. If you have premium, you can ban. If you don't, you can only like and dislike stuff. The only one I have ever banned is now unbanned, weirdly enough, and it was that massive map, which I'm guessing is not in rotation anymore, because otherwise it would be there. That's weird. Rocky Canyon. Did they remove it from rotation? No, they didn't, but they made it 9.7 plus. So that's why it isn't. But yeah, so that's how you do that. And you can make it so you see different, or, you know, the same things or different things more often. It's not a foolproof way, but it's good enough. Now we have DX Hunter. Hey TEC. War Thunder community seems dead set on proclaiming bias 24/7, Russian bias this, Germany suffers that, US unplayable, etc. Do you believe there's actual bias in the game? No. No, I don't. The reason why is for every example of people seeing bias in one way, I can provide, you know, a similar thing for a different nation or other thing. Like the big one a lot of people talk about is the USSR ammo racks at high tiers, which is fair because it's annoying as hell and they should change it. It's also something that happens with pretty much all vehicles at high tiers. Where I've had it many times where I shoot Abrams, shoot even Arietes, shoot Leopards, where you shoot their ammo, blacks it, disappears, doesn't explode. And I don't mean like explosive panels, I mean like the ammo in different areas of the vehicle. So it's just one of those things where it depends on who you're talking to. If you have a person, like we have a saying, and the saying is, if you are like a one-trick pony, if you are a one-nation main, we can just completely disregard what you think, because it's going to be so biased, you won't believe it. Because in order to understand a situation at a certain BR bracket, you have to pretty much play all the vehicles at the BR bracket and play against all of the vehicles from all the other sets in that BR bracket to get kind of a mix of what's going on, which is why it's pretty much impossible to balance from a feel or belief point of view, because you can't do that, right? So you have to base it on your opinions and not experience, and opinions are a horrible thing to base anything off of, and all of these bias claims are always just opinions that you hear from people. So it's just one of those things where you got to understand that. And the fact is, it always centers around the same three nations: Russia, Germany, US. And that's because these three nations are the most that are played. So those are the guys who are the loudest. The minority of those who are the loudest are going to be louder than everyone else's minorities. Depending on what time of day you even look in certain places, you can see completely different people proclaiming completely counter ideas. At the end of the day, it's just people who are annoyed that they got killed by something, or annoyed that they can't do what the enemy can. And the opportunity there for an individual is, what you say to that person is this: if you think they are more better than you, or if you think that they're doing better, just go play them and then feel them, go through them, work out how to kill them, or work out how to play with them, right? As simple as that. See the other side of the coin. President Irinal Vladimir Ovna. Weeb. TEC. If the PewDiePie voice pack was added like you said, any streamers using it would never be able to cross bridges. What a... God damn. It's nice to hear PewDiePie doing well, by the way. We were talking about him earlier. It just seems like a cool dude. I don't know. It's just one of those people you're just happy that he does alright. Like, even though he said some interesting things. On a different note, I keep having an issue when I go to lock onto an enemy aircraft with radar. Sometimes it works instantly, no problem, but a lot of the time I have to press it 6 to 10 times before it actually activates the lock. And then it doesn't actually lock onto what I want to. Am I doing something wrong, or is it some sort of wonky bug? I'm having a similar issue with a lot of radars right now, so I think it might be... I think the issue right now with radars is probably linked to the changes they made a few months ago, because that's when they started popping up. Seems like a lot of radars are having these problems, and I don't know whether it's to try and make them more realistic or whatever, but it's incredibly annoying, which is, you know, not fun. And also, to the guy complaining about Brexit in a Tech Talk comment, why? I'm sure a lot of people would be loving Brexit right now if the Conservative government currently in power in Britain wasn't doing the exact same bullshit the EU was doing anyways. And here's yet another issue with relying entirely on statistics, which ironically is very related to War Thunder. The Tories see GDP line go up and think that automatically means country's great. It very much is not. What can you do? Globalists will be globalists. I mean, yeah, we talked about it, right? It's the Conservatives are probably going to lose power in the next election. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, that basically just means that my savings will go up, so I don't really care. But but yeah, it's we'll see what goes on. All you have to do is look around the EU right now, and there is a decent amount of anti-EU sentiment. If you have a look at Italy, for example, France as well, you know, with the way that that's all set up, and even Spain right now. So yeah, we'll see what goes on. Not going to go into it because we're talking about War Thunder, but it's a fair point. Maybe at some point we'll do like a separate podcast on the other channel, which is like talking about other things. But yeah, that's a different one. Is there a way to propose vehicles to the devs you want to see in game? Yeah, War Thunder forums suggestions. So we have Omega Mark. These non-stop battle passes running for years now are ridiculous. They need to spread them more and maybe do at least a month of break during which there are old Warbond stores with monthly rewards. We used to get Warbond vehicles once a month and juicy 500% boosters for free. Now we have to pay for them and they're just every 3 months. That's just another way we're getting stealth shafted by Gaijin. Yeah, I agree. I brought it up at the time, right? Nice to see you cat hunting, hopefully doing well. I haven't talked about Jeremy Clarkson yet, no. But yeah, it sucks with the Warbond shop. You know, the camouflage change they did with it, where you can't get camouflage things every Warbond now, and now Warbond every 3 months. They removed the battle trophy box, you know, and they added in a bunch of cool stuff, which was great, but they also removed a bunch of cool stuff. So I don't know why. It just kind of sucks. I think there should be a time between battle passes, definitely. I don't like the on-running thing constantly. I think it does or has issues when it comes to the game, and it means that it becomes like a factory line, and obviously that's not fun compared to not being a factory line. But then, you know, the counter is, well, why don't you just not do it? And it's like, well, yeah, fair. I mean, that is a counter, but also at the same time, I just think in general, it would just be beneficial to have breaks just to kind of stop the burnout. Pretty much everybody that I used to play with from back in the day is now no longer playing. And a lot of it is because there used to be players like me where we would play pretty much all of the different events and stuff. And then, you know, between the events, we'd just take a chill time, play some other stuff. Well, now there's constantly events all the time. They're now just straight up burned out. Like, it took them 2 years, but they're gone now. They're done. Like, it just broke them. So then we have AW95473. Would it be possible for Japan to get a sub-tree? Yeah. They could add whatever they want to it, you know. Doesn't have to have any connections or anything. Like, you know. The Hunter. The Hunter in the German tree. The JPZ in the German tree. Vehicles are added to nations for balance. No other reason. So we have Bluebud. Why is everyone unrealistic with tech trees? Only viable tech tree that left is possibly only Yugoslavia or Central Europe, like Poland and Czechoslovakia, because people are nationalistic, which isn't necessarily a negative thing, but they just want to see their nation in the game. And if you haven't worked out yet, the countries which usually get proposed when it comes to independent tech trees are the ones with the largest populations. Weird, right? Nobody's gunning for an Albanian tech tree, or nobody's gunning for a Portuguese tech tree. It's always the ones which have the largest population masses, because that's where you have the largest amount of people from, and those are the people who are pushing those ideas. And all it takes is one person to make some kind of tech tree and then it gets spread around and people say it's viable, right? Even though it just isn't. So yeah, that's basically why. So then you have John Erickson. Would be cool to have a turkey as a subtree. Yeah, I agree, but once again, large population base, so same thing. Yeah, it would be cool to see. Don't know how they'd do it. Maybe it's Israel with the Sabras. We'll have to see. It'll be nice. Mean Greenie. Adding subtrees to the existing nations definitely seems the way to go, with one exception. Who do we add to the Israeli tree to get some diversity into it? Real world politics have no place in the game, but I can hear the patriotic screams of outrage and complaints already. Should Israel become more of a Middle East, North African tech tree purely in the quest for variety? Yeah, they should. You should add, if you want, you could change its name, but I honestly think it would be better just to have at the end of the day, you can add a bunch of captured vehicles, right? Like the IS-3, for example, T-55s, they'll have to be specifically Terrans, but you could just rename them. You just add those vehicles in, give it a bit of variety, and then if that's not enough, you just add more nations to it. The Gaijin has said many times they're apolitical. Time to start acting like it, right? That's just how this goes. We have Zach Bad Company. NATO mains never once complained when it was the Abrams and Leopards had over 70% win rate. I grinded out all the USSR, losing 70% of games. Then I grinded out the whole German tree in 3 months because I had over 70% win rate. Yeah, it brings up a salient point. Once again, people push for their own things, and people don't complain when stuff's good. When the F-14 was top dog and there was nothing that could touch it, didn't see a lot of complaints from the English-speaking community. Just a bunch of cool highlight reels of MiG-23s just getting blasted over and over and over again. So yeah, it's just how it goes. It's the biggest issue with War Thunder, and it'll never change. People are very centralized around the things they play and nothing else. So now we have Bull. Canadian Leopard 2A4M, please, and LAV6. Sure, why not? Go crazy. So we have Toshio. I'm doing well. Good stuff, man. This summer has been very busy for me, since I've decided not to join the host of family asking you grandchildren when. Do you have a strategy for guiding your kids through this ever-evolving world of media connection? I remember when the closest you could reach a friend was by calling their house. I think the main thing is hard limits, and this isn't just for children. This is literally for adults too. There should be a specific time of the day where you shut off everything. So for me, it's 8, right? So 8 p.m. Not phones hardly touched unless emergencies, TVs, computers, everything just shut off, right? So you have that line between reality and fiction, which the online world is. The other thing is just actually getting them to read books. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm paying, you basically get X amount of money per book that you read. So there was something I saw online where it's okay, so pay $5 per book read. And then the way that you work out if they've read it or not is you can read it with them, or you can do that stuff, and then you just gradually increase the amount of books that they read and go through, which I think is a good idea. Early learning as well. So doing maths very early on, learning to write very early on, so therefore when they're in school they can actually focus on useful things instead of just 1 + 1 is 2 and all that stuff. And the other main thing is actually going to community events in real life. So it's kind of as simple as that. You, at the end of the day, you're going to need hard limits. And that's just something that parents have done for an incredibly long time and will do going forward. It's just the things that are being limited are different in different parts. And common consents again. Canadian MiG-21, Red Hawk, please, and Arrow, of course, the Canadian Grizzlies, Leopards, etc. armor. Well, the MiG-21 was an April Fool's joke, but yeah, they could do it. Ooh. The Dolly Parton Foundation thing's pretty fun for reading books as well. That one's kind of cool. Big ups to Dolly. So we have Samuel Seckle. I have some suggestions which could improve the game, and I'd like to hear your opinion on them. 1. Driver's window. Like the one is kill camera in top right corner. When driving and looking through gunner scope. This would help players to avoid obstacles so they don't bump into them or other players. Sure. I suppose. Thank you for the subscription, Sir Revolver. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much, man. Nice to see you. Doing well. Doing great. Hopefully you're doing okay. 2. Binoculars for aircraft for easier spotting and identification for enemy vehicles, mainly in ground RB. Some aircraft could also get scouting ability. I like the first part, not the second. Certain aircraft do have magnifying glasses. But yeah, binos would be cool. I don't want scouting though, from the air. It's one of those things which would be a bad idea. So yeah. Number 3, more sub-trees like Korea and Indonesia for Japan Tech Tree or Visegrad Group, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, and Hungary for Italian Tech Tree. Yep, big fan of that. Would love to see that. 4. Repair priority. Players could select damaged modules for their vehicles based on their situation and repair them first. For example, a vehicle without a cannon or tracks, players could select the cannon in X-ray mode or quick selection menu and repair it before the tracks, and thus making him less vulnerable to the enemy or her. Yeah, sure. Good stuff, Sir Revolver. That's great to hear, man. Good stuff. Well done. Hope you're enjoying everything. Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with that, but I'd actually change it slightly. So I would actually put it in the options menu, and I would just have a list of priorities. So it would just be like firepower, then mobility, then, I don't know, like turret guidance or something like that. So you just have a layer of priorities on what you go for, right? I think that's the way to go at the end of the day. P.S. Thank you for all the videos. It really helps me stay in touch with all the changes going around. Yeah, it's been a nuts the last few years, but we'll keep it up. We'll have a good time. Mephisto Clemix. Hi Tech. I want to start by saying that you seem to be one of the few YouTubers to give a shit about console players. I was thinking, isn't the customization a bit outdated in the game? It's basically the only mechanic that remained the same since the start of playing in 2016. Of course I give a shit about, console players. Like you're part of the community, and at the end of the day, it's incredibly important to try and make sure that everybody is at a good level instead of just certain individuals. So yeah, of course I care. I care about all parts. Also, I mean, yeah, they have improved the customization over time. More camouflages, different sizes of decals, different decorations. But yeah, they could improve it. The profile is the main thing I would prefer that they focused on, though. That to me is the big one. That would be nice to see. Hey, Force Fuser, nice to see you. I'd like to see some improvements on that. Also, I know that you'll cringe this opinion, but I think it's about time that us weebs get the Girls and Panzer event already. People shouldn't be afraid of a P40 with a pizza decal. They don't like it, they could just turn it off. But I also understand that the game treats the content with more respect for history, unlike World of Tanks. Another thing I would like to add is that I like that you get only slightly annoyed answering the same question over and over for the past year. Could you also show us the creature we were embarking in in every video? Is time that we also see with our own eyes. AJ, I'll put him in. I'll put him in an intro of one of the videos, so you can see him. But yeah, so the Girls and Panzer thing, I think the main issue with it is they already did a collaboration with World of Tanks, and maybe there's like an exclusivity deal with it and stuff. It obviously makes sense since there's pretty good crossover between them. People are always going to be annoyed about the anime stuff. For me personally, I don't mind any of that stuff because, as you said, you can turn it off. The main issue I have with it is just the over-sexualization of minors, and Girls and Panzer does it as well. They literally do like the shower scenes with teenage girls, which is just screwed, right? Like there's no need for that. Like there's no need for any of that, but they still do it, and it's just how it is. That's my main gripe with this stuff. But events like that, I mean, we have the Atomic Thunder event, right? And we have had weeb events in the past with the anime pillars and everything done by a dude who literally draws child porn. But, you know, once again, doesn't matter because blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. So, yeah, easy as it goes. They'll do events in the future. The War Thunder, the morality level has massively reduced over the last year because money has become an increasingly heavy factor when it comes to these things. So we're just going to see more customization and more things like that. So it just is how it is. So we have Tom Davis. Thanks for the sound effect. Hope you have a nice day. Oh, anytime. So there we go. And one question from Abigail Cake. Hey, Tech. I have a plan for War Tinder. We do a Final Fantasy VII crossover where you can get Tifa Lockhart as a profile pic. They could even add her as an Italian profile picture for the meme value. We have seen recently that sex sells in War Thunder with the redhead pilot Christmas profile, certain adult content stars getting decals, and the new robot Atomic Heart profile pics. So my question is as follows. If you had to add some that you feel would garner the most interest, what would they be? Also, the same question is extended to the genders being used for their sex appeal. Which more traditionally masculine figures would you add? So, obviously, if we go, like, the interest thing you're going to look at is women aged 18 to 24 who are thin, who are generally of either Asian or Caucasian origin. So that is, like, who you'd want to target, because that is who your player base are going to like based on where they're from, which is mainly West, East, Europe, and that area, right? There's also a decent Asian contingent, but when you have a look at Africa, Africa does have some representation when it comes to War Thunder, but nowhere near the amount of those other areas. So the people who you actually go after, if you want to do sponsorship deals, are literally people like Bella Delphine, weirdly enough. Like, you go after people like Bella Delphine, or you go after other stars. The other age group you could target is women from 35 to 45. So you would find some what would be known as MILF porn stars to be able to collaborate with, because unfortunately a lot of War Thunder players have parental issues, and you'd want to exploit that through that setup, right? So that's who you would do, unfortunately, but that's just how it goes. The other thing you would also target is people who would annoy parts of the player base, and also other parts of the player base would not be able to stop talking about. So there's the guy from Smash. Who was the really good player who was the gay furry, the homosexual furry in Smash, the content guy, or the professional player, whoever that guy is. You would target people like him to give a very small amount of money to, because they're not worth a lot of value, but also you could get the most out of them, because you could use them as not just a person that people could cling to, you could use them as a conversation piece to therefore get people talking about the game. We've talked about negative advertising in the past and how it works. So that's how you know you set up that stuff, right? So let's see. What was his name? Sonic Fox, that guy. Sonic Fox. He's an openly gay and non-binary as well as a furry. So yeah, he's a guy who plays fighting games. He's Evil Geniuses. You do a collab with him because you know he's a divisive figure. I still remember reading one of the stories about him, which was literally about how he, as a person, people, like, he put on this idea that people didn't like him because of who he was. But actually, a lot of people came out and said they didn't actually like hanging around the dude because he didn't wash his fursuit and he just stank all the time. which is something I always found quite funny. But so it wasn't anything to do with, like, you know, who he was or who he you know wanted to be. It was literally just because he just didn't wash. But but yeah, you would target people like that if you wanted to go for the negative advertising angle. When it comes to other sex appeal things, I mean, there is a lot of people in War Thunder who are homosexuals or who do bend that way, or, you know, from another word, try and get whatever the hell that they can get, because it's not easy to get anything for them. How about that? You know, any hole's gold kind of deal. So what you would do is you would obviously hit them up with models, but the main ones is you want to take traditionally masculine roles and run with them. So stuff like firemen, for example. Firemen, any policemen, bodybuilders is something that they could also do. You know, get Ronnie Coleman on the setup, or pick people who, you know, don't, you know, exist anymore, who are dead, so it's easy to, you know, use their rights. So yeah, you could use people like that. If you use people who are still alive, then you're going to have to pay them a metric ton of money to use their likeness, which is never good. So you just want to pick people who that parts of the community would know. Like, I can't remember what the bodybuilder was, but it was the guy with the mustache and the glasses, the dude who was kind of around at the same time as Arnold, but I can't remember his name. So yeah, you'd pick stereotypical, just massive dudes, right? And that's who you would aim for. And you would also do the twinks, because once again, what we've seen in the online world is certain people who are very loud and very not confident, because they don't do it in real life, but on the internet, who are very confident, are twinks. So what you would do is, once again, you would add one of these in, because it would get a lot of media attention, it would get a lot of people talking about it, whether it was positive or negative. And yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that. The other thing you could also do is take film roles, as Teddy's saying. So like stuff like Doctor Who, like think about like Magic the Gathering, right? So Magic the Gathering recently have done, you know, a massive set on Lord of the Rings, right? And now they're doing a set on Doctor Who. You could do like masculine characters like that who aren't actually that masculine. People like David Tennant, people like the dude who came after him, which I can't remember. Christopher Eccleston would be a fantastic pick, because he was definitely the best Doctor. Don't even want to hear like anything about it. Easily the best Doctor. But yeah, so you could do people like that. There's plenty of them, right? But yeah, it would be nice to see, and you could add them in whenever. Yeah, people like Sylvester Stallone, but he's not dead yet, so you got to wait like 10 years. But yeah, there's plenty of options. Matt Smith. Matt Smith was the guy after David Tennant. Capaldi was good as well, but not as the Doctor. He was good in the thick of it, which is a very good show. So then we have DeJesse Gamer. What about Spanish vehicles like the Pizarro, the Buochon, the Canarius class, for example? Sure, add them in whatever tech tree would suit them the best. What if you want JFK? Yeah, why not? Oh no, I can't scroll down anymore. Okay, do. There you go. So this is the last set. It won't let me scroll down. So we have Suri Gurk. Don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I did not find it anywhere. Do you must buy something in the shop after you click the decal link? In order to get the decal, yes, you do. You have to buy something in order to get the decal. Because the idea is it's an affiliation link, right? Then we have Zanel. How can I get the normal PO2? I want it so much. They usually bring it back like once or twice a year in October. So if you want the standard tech tree PO2, that's impossible to get, unfortunately, because they removed it a very long time ago. That's why there's 2 versions of the PO2 technically. Then, what did you say about me losing to an orangutan? I feel like most people will get decked by an orangutan. We talked about this previously. I think I could screw up like a lynx or something like that. I know it would be hard to do, but you could definitely screw up something like that much easier than an orangutan. Like, it would just annihilate you, you know? Yeah, you can do a starter pack or something. That would work well. Potato clips. How do I bother the purple and blue upgrade coupons in the next battle pass? How do you use to buy them, basically? So what you do is when the next battle pass comes out, you'll have the 2 coupons, and what you can do is you can combine them together when the battle pass is out. It'll give you the option when you buy the battle pass if you want to use the coupons or not. So don't use them yet, wait for the next battle pass to come, and then when you go to purchase it, it will say, do you want to use the coupons? That's pretty much it when you go to buy it. Then we have Brian Korn. I find it hard to fathom how someone can hate you and other CCs. As you would say, at the end of the day, it's a video game. People, not world hunger or something. Get the heads out of your asses and grow up a bit. I wear the tech decal on some of the stuff proudly and got your back from what it's worth. Tramps like us. You gotta love tramps like us, you know. I really enjoyed still enjoy the baggy trousers boys that I can't remember the name of. Baggy trousers. Our house in the middle of our streets. But yeah, I mean the reason why people end up hating things is because they have nothing else in their lives to go after. So a lot of people project. So if they have bad lives outside of the screen, they take it out on other people to drag them down so they make themselves feel better. It's a classic thing that many teenagers do, and also many people who are in very tough places do in their lives. And at the end of the day, it's just what happens. It's a standard psychological thing with humans. It's very sad that it happens, but you can't change it, you know? Yeah, madness, there you go. But yeah, it's just how it is. Like, you can't do anything with it. Like, it's some people in negative places will bring everybody down. And the best thing to do is to ignore those people, and you'll feel a lot better in life. Then we have Zach Bad. Go play arcade if you want every nation on every team. Yeah, you can do that. That's true. That exists as well. And it's not a bad idea at the end of the day. Whew! Got through them all. Not bad. Do you guys have any questions in the chat before we wrap this up? Before we get done with the video and then get back to playing some War Thunder after having a bit of a drink. Oh, my voice was dying like half of the ways. Can you explain your actions in the Yugoslav wars in the 1990s? No. You'll have to wait 30 years for those records to be uncovered. How can I get the A1H? I think you buy them off the market. I think that's the only way you can get it, if you can get it. Fireside chats. Did you say they were coming back? I did, yes, and they're going to be coming back soon. Next season pass a dud? No, I think it's fine. Like, generally it's okay. I'm not too worried about it. It's 3 pretty decent vehicles. They're just not that interesting apart from the tank. But a lot of people will get it because it's German, so it'll be fine. Is the A1H worth 70 Australian dollars? No. You can literally just play all the other things. You're basically playing $70 for a toilet. You really sound like your voice is down right now? Yeah, it is. But we've been talking for 3 hours straight, so. Do you play SM sometimes? Yeah, sometimes. Is Enlisted mostly bots? Thought about downloading it. The way that Enlisted works is it's 10 versus 10 players, and each player has a squadron that they can take in. These squadrons can range from 3 people to 9 people, and you can quick switch between them. So technically you have a squad of people that you can quick switch between, but when you're not using those other parts of the squads, they are being controlled by AI, which is pretty cool. We're going to be back to playing Enlisted soon because the Battle Pass is going to come back. What time's the encounter right now? For me, it's 4:30 PST. Do you expect Gaijin to continue experimenting with new game modes like they did last year with the limited time test? Yeah. There's communication of 996? Nah. 996 is fun. I enjoy him a lot. He always has some interesting ideas. Right, let's wrap it up. Am I going to be free today? I mean, technically, after this, Freeman, I'll be about. We can chat if you want. But yeah, as always, thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts, make sure to put them in the comments. Look after yourselves, and see you next week in the next TED Talk. Tech Talk, not TED Talk. Woo. Anyway, bye.